Test 1 2 1 2 test test. Okay. Thank you. Call this meeting to order. Please rise and remove your hats if you're able to for our national anthem.
Oh, Canada, our home and native land, true your love in all of us command, car ton bras s'est porté l'épée, il s'est porté la croix. Ton histoire est une épopée des plus brillants exploits. God, keep our land glorious and free. Oh, Canada, we stand on God for thee. Oh, Canada, we stand on God for thee. Oh, Canada,
Just once, Mary.
our home and native land, true pain.
There you go. Can only take Councillor Baggy singing once. This time I'd like to call on Councillor Hoyle for our land acknowledgement.
Niagara region is situated on treaty land. The land is steeped in rich history of the First Nations such as Wattaduanki, the Haudenosaunee, and the Anishinaabe, including the Mississaugas of the Credit First Nation. There are many First Nations, Métis, and Inuit people from across Turtle Island that live and work in Niagara today. The City of Port Colborne stands with all Indigenous people, past and present, in promoting the wise stewardship of the land on which we live.
Thank you, Councillor. We have one proclamation moved by Councillors Danch and Bruno that I, Mayor William C. Steele, hereby proclaim October 27th to November 11th, 2023 as Poppy Weeks in the City of Port Colborne in honor of the men and women from Port Colborne who gave their lives during the two world wars, the Korean War and the Afghanistan War. Questions? All in favor? Carried. Adoption of the agenda, Council. If I could have Councillors Bagu and Aquilina move the agenda. Two changes, Council. If we could move items 9.3 and 9.4 prior to 9.1 and 9.2, if that's okay. All right. Any questions with regards to the agenda or any other changes? All those in favor? That's carried. Disclosures of interest. I have one disclosure of interest this evening. Councillor Bodnar has declared a conflict on item 9.2, recommendation report for proposed official plan and zoning bylaw amendment 135 Coronation Drive 2023-154, and 21.4 being a bylaw to adapt amendment number 12 to the official plan for the City of Port Colborne. Any further disclosures? Thank you. Approval of minutes. We have the special council minutes, regular meeting of council minutes, and the special council minutes. If I could have Councillors Bodnar and Hoyle move those. Are there questions on any of those minutes? All in favor? That's carried. Okay, so the following items have been pulled this evening. We have item 8.1, 9.1, 9.2, 9.3, and 9.4. Any further items? If I could have Councillors Danch and Elliott move the remainder of the items, including correspondence. No questions, all in favor? That's carried. Okay, we're on to presentations. If I could ask Member B. Kenny to come forward from the Grant Committee to the front with Members Hoyle and Aquilina.
I'm going to move so I'm not in the picture. You can stay if you want to stay.
So, thank you, everyone. So, just to introduce, Chair B. Kenny, former City Councilor for Ward 3 for the Grant Policy Committee, and we have Councilors Monique Aquilina and Tim Hoyle. Some background about the grant allocation program. The grant committee meets twice a year to adjudicate and award funding to local nonprofit groups and organizations based on the applications that they submit to us. The deadline to apply for this allocation, the second of 2 rounds for 2023, was June. The committee met July 26 to discuss the merits of the applications. Grants were allocated to 7 community groups and organizations. The committee is pleased to present checks to representatives of the groups who are here with us this evening. And I call upon our chair, B. Kenny, to make these presentations. B?
Thank you. This is the best part. That's why you all came. You all came to find out your tax dollars, community tax, going to good community groups in your own community. So it's one of my favorite times. The only person who's not here from the committee is Brenda Hames. Brenda Hames is a member of the community, as am I. So there's 2 members of the community and 2 members of council that sit on there, and the mayor, he's just the guy that sits there and listens.
That's right.
Anyways, the first person I'd like to call up is Megan Riley. Megan is from the Niagara Nutrition Partners, and on behalf of the committee, I'm pleased to present a check from the committee to you for the amount of $4,000, and this money is to help Nutrition Partners pay for 1,050 meals for Port Colborne school children.
Wow.
Just about Niagara Nutrition Partners, who we are, what we do here in Port Colborne and the entire region, and why this is so meaningful to us. So we are a region-wide nonprofit agency. We serve about 24,000 students every single day with breakfast, lunch, and snacks. They all meet nutrition guidelines, and our programs are universal, which means every student at the school can access a meal, doesn't matter why. They can eat every single day. Here in Port Colborne, we serve well over 1,000 students every day. We're in 14 school-based programs, so some great ones I can list off. McKay is a wonderful, they have a wonderful, big, robust nutrition program. École St. Joseph does an amazing job where they engage their students, staff, community volunteers to help serve students meals every day. So these funds will remain in Port Colborne. They will support those 14 programs and feed students daily with nutritious food. So we thank you so much for this grant. This is wonderful. Thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you. Thank you so much. I appreciate it. Thank you.
Sorry, is it okay if I just take
yeah,
a picture?
sure.
Thank you.
Sorry.
Thank you.
Thank you.
The second person I'm going to ask up is Amanda Upper. Amanda represents the Port Cares Reach Out Center. And on behalf of the grant committee, I'd like to present a check to your group to the amount of $3,500. And that's to cover food for grocery bags, lunch kits, and community meals.
So much. Thank you. So, partners, because we are your apple of Port Colborne. Just briefly, Port Cares has been providing help, hope, and opportunity for all in our community to achieve their potential since 1986. We're a cornerstone agency in Port Colborne, and we're serving more people than ever before. But we couldn't do the amazing things we do without the support of the community and the city standing behind us. So kudos to all of you for making it possible for us to change lives, save lives, improve lives. Appreciate it.
The third group I'm going to call up Glenda Buck. Glenda is the treasurer of Friends of Roselawn Center. And Glenda, on behalf of the Grant Allocation Committee, I'm pleased to present a check for $1,500 to help pay for art tool learning center, a tiny art library, and author talks.
Thank you very much. On behalf of Friends of Roseland Center, I would like to thank you very much for this opportunity to expand our exposure of the arts to the community by creating the arts library and the art lending tools in the library. It's a great initiative, and thank you very much.
Okay, the next group I want to call up, Dakota Dakoti? No, Rachel Dakoti. And Rachel, on behalf of the grant committee, I'm happy to present this check for $2,300. I was so excited because I told her earlier, I was on the first girls hockey team in Port Colborne. Defense!
On behalf of Port Colborne Female Hockey, I appreciate this money to go towards. I'm new to the executive, so I'm excited for this year to get the girls going. If you want to watch a game, come on Sundays. Thank you. Thank you.
No, you have a camera.
Oh, sorry, camera. The next group up is Susan Visser. Susan represents the Port Colborne Art Club, and it's my pleasure to present this check of $1,500 to help cover the cost of creating and maintaining a website. Now you're able to modernize old school pens and papers. The funding will help you streamline, and we're very happy to present this check as a community group.
Thank you so much. Thank you. On behalf of Port Colborne Art Club, I'd like to thank you for this money. We need some technology at the club now so we can put the word out and get more people to come and join us and learn how to paint. Thank you. Thank you so much.
And our next group is Patty Clark, Darko Markovic, and Nancy Bosfield.
Darko's not here.
Nancy, not here, okay. And they're from the Oak Center's Lake House, and the grant committee has presented a check for $2,300 to help cover renovation costs at your new clubhouse. Congratulations.
On behalf of Lake House and the Oak Center is in Welland, we would like to thank the city of Port Colborne and the community for your donation.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And last but certainly not least, it's Leanne Solar and Juliana, the second Port Colborne Scouts group. On behalf of the grant committee, I'm pleased to present you this check for $2,400, and that's to help pay for renovations so you can reopen the scout camp, right?
Yes.
That's great. So there it goes.
Thank you very much. we are trying to work with Scouts Canada to get the Camp Day La Hum, I never know how to say it correctly, but Camp Day, I'd like to say, on Pinecrest there. We want to get it back open for our groups to use, have camping, campfires, and our weekly meetings that we're doing. So thank you very much.
And as I said, your tax dollars going right back to the community, to all these groups, so that's one really, really good thing that I know I'm proud of as being in the mayor, so thank you.
Great, thank you, Bea, and congratulations to all of our recipients. And just a reminder, the grant committee will meet again in February, and the first allocation of funding for 2024. The deadline for that application will be January 31st. You can go to our city website, cityofportcover.ca, for that application for any community group that's nonprofit. And that really ends this. And guys, great job, and we've got more money to give away for
Oh, yes, we do.
Thank you.
Hey, Bea. You said nothing else in the last 10 days. Anything else in 20? They don't want to be in the back of the pictures. They want to break a camera.
Here for a second.
Tim did.
I had to zoom out.
No, you did the right thing. You moved it, but.
And head coach and general manager Scott Barnes and Al Martini. If they can come up, please. We know Al's been a member of many junior hockey teams over the years as trainer, all-around helper, and then Scott has been involved formerly with the Thorold Blackhawks, which he's moved here to Port Colborne. We thank Scott for showing confidence within the city of Port Colborne at the best facility, the Valet Center within Niagara. Your team's off to a great start. Opening night was well over 600 people, which was fantastic.
Yeah, it was awesome.
A little mad I didn't win the half and half, but that's okay.
Neither did I.
So anyways, Scott, come on up.
All right. Ali wants in here.
Yeah, as Mayor Steele alluded to, I was involved between 1985 and 1998 with the old Port Colborne Sailors that were here. And that's when I had the pleasure to work with Scott as he came up through the ranks with the Sailors. And since then, I've done several little projects with Scott through the years. When he brought Thorold here last year, he asked me to come on board to fix the room. And so I did that, and now that we're here this year, and we're very happy to be here in the new version of the Port Colborne Junior B Sailors. It's been an exciting ride, an exciting trip, and I'm very pleased to announce to you the head coach and the owner of the Port Colborne Junior Sailors, Scott Barnes.
Hey, thanks, guys. You just introduced me, but I just want to introduce myself and kind of, as the owner operator of the Port Colborne Sailors, and express my excitement in bringing junior hockey back to Port. I'm a former sailor myself, as Al mentioned right there, playing back in the mid to late 90s. I remember we had great fans and support within the community, and our goal is to reestablish that. I would like to thank Mayor Bill Steele back here in the role that he played in us relocating this team. Also to the arena staff, that have been great for us since we moved here temporarily in 22. I don't know if everybody knows the history, but we were in Thorold and we kind of had to relocate due to ice problems there. So the mayor and the city staff are really the main reasons that our move has gone so smoothly, making us feel comfortable from day one, which again was during the 2022 playoffs. Our goal is to have a really successful team in our first year and go on a lengthy playoff run. Like Bill said there, we got a pretty good team that we put together. It was we've been gearing towards this season as a team that we thought we could kind of win a championship with. So it's kind of perfect that we're in here this year. So I'm hoping the city can get behind us, and also we are committed to becoming a big part of the community. I'm really looking forward to seeing you all at the rink and cheering on the Sailors. So our home games are Fridays again, like it was way back when I played, with a few Saturdays sprinkled in here and there. This weekend we got a game on Friday, and then on Saturday, these are our third jerseys that Bill's wearing right here. So we're in a third jersey night on Saturday. We'll kind of present those to be the first time we've worn those. So anyway, we're just trying to express our thanks to everybody here in council for letting us come here for I guess this is our first year, but even last year too. So I just really appreciate everything you guys done. So thank you.
So guys, we really appreciate this, and as I stated earlier, like if you look at the roster, we've got how many kids from Port right now?
I think we got 4, something like
So,
that. We had 6, but
a couple went to.
one kid's hurt, and hopefully he comes back, and then
One kid went a little
see how it
higher,
goes.
so yeah, we'll see how that goes. But there are local kids in this team. Sometimes over the years, you get it where there are no local kids on a junior B team in certain communities. So I do congratulate these guys for bringing on the local talent. As I said, the first game was a little bit of a heartbreak.
Yeah.
But they went into Hamilton and they came from behind and they won the other night. Hamilton, one of the top teams in the Golden Horseshoe. So again, congratulations, and we welcome the Sailors back to Port Colborne.
Yeah,
Thank you.
Thanks for having me.
Thank you.
Yeah. See ya.
You can wear for this.
All right. Good, thanks.
Thanks, guys.
Now on to the mayor's report. Kudos to the organization committee led by Alicia Arnold and Melissa Bigford and Port Colborne High Principal Paul Taylor. You and your team did a fantastic job organizing the 100th anniversary homecoming reunion on Saturday, September 23rd. And what a homecoming it was. Port High Blue Bears attended from as far away as Houston, Texas, Los Angeles, California, and hundreds from right here at Port Colborne, across the region, across the province, and the country. Everyone really enjoyed it, wandering the halls and classes after 10, 20, or even 50 years or more. We had one gentleman that's turning 100, and he attended, Lawson Snyder. And he went there many moons ago. He attended just after my dad graduated from Port High. And flipping through their old yearbooks, reminiscing the mischief and mayhem of our teenage years, Alicia and her alumni parents, the Arnolds, and all the team did an awesome job pulling all the decades of students and teachers together. The Belmont was busy Friday night with alumni, and the after parties continued Sunday with so many reunions of friends and family. Not many schools make it to 100 years. We are so fortunate to be able to celebrate a century of our school with its amazing new track and field facility. And a reminder to everyone that the Centennial Art Show is on at Roselawn until October the 23rd, and the old school exhibit is on at the museum until the end of the year. Kudos to our staff at the Operations Center and Fire Station 1 for joining forces to present an open house and touch a truck. What an amazing event. We'll always remember on the 21st of September. It was clear many parents and grandparents enjoyed it as much as the children. I think Steve had to pull a few granddads off the big trucks to get them out of there so the little kids could get on. And it was a pure joy on the faces as children of all ages climbed in behind of a wheel of a grader, a snow plow, a fire truck, a police vehicle, anything you can see that we use within the city of Port Colborne and the region. And the chance for a child to pull on bunker gear and a fireman's helmet and aim the fire hoses, is there anything more exciting? Council and I are so proud of all the staff involved in coordinating this event. You did a super job. You impressed everyone who attended. Thank you all, and thanks to all of you who attended, and we'll see you again next year at that event. We thank everyone who attended the Billy Joel Community Concert Friday evening at King George Park. Another great crowd for the 6th of our community concerts this summer. Elton Lammy, who played Billy Joel, is an amazing talent, and we're so glad you all enjoyed him and all the concerts we've presented this year. You'll enjoy the final concert of the season this Friday at H.H. Noel Lakeview Park. It's called Message in a Bottle, a tribute to the Police and Sting. Bring your lawn chairs and settle in. The concert runs from 7 p.m. to 9 p.m. September 30th marks the National Day of Truth and Reconciliation and Orange Shirt Day. The day honors the children who never returned home and the survivors of residential schools, as well as their families and communities. September 30 reminds us that every child matters. Public commemoration of the tragic and painful history and ongoing impacts of residential schools is a vital component of the reconciliation process. We have offered council and staff several ways to reflect on the 94 calls to action established by the Truth and Reconciliation Commission of Canada. We've made available several education resources. Everyone is invited to the library for lunch and learn programs presented by the National Center for Truth and Reconciliation, and the library will broadcast the free programs every day this week from 1:30 to 2:30. On Saturday, September 30th at 2 o'clock, the library presents a special screening of the short film Orange Shirt Day in the L.R. Wilson Archives. Everyone is invited to see the 50-minute film about the life of Phyllis Webstad, founder of the Orange Shirt Day, and it's free for all. And to conclude my report this evening, a final reminder to all drivers, please slow down. Residents call my office daily to report incidents of speeding, as well as these counselors, and we've seen accidents and fatalities on the news every day from across our province. Please, everyone, if the sign says 50, please drive 50. Slow down to 40 in school zones. We don't need more signs. Nobody wants more signs. It's up to all of us to be responsible and safe. And this concludes my report. Any questions? Thank you. Councillor Davies is not here this evening. Are there any regional items? Okay, thank you. On to staff remarks. I'll start at my left. Mr. Long, any remarks this evening? Chief Lawson. Mr. Shapowski. Mr. Bowles? Denise? No. Anyone else? Scott? Nothing? Wow. Holy moly. Councillor's remarks. I'll start on my right this evening. Councillor Aquilina, anything to add? Councillor Bagu?
I don't want to say anything either, Mr. Mayor. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Bruno?
Good tonight. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Elliott? Councillor Danch?
I always got to see something. I'd just like to compliment Steve and his staff in the parks there. I don't know if any of you guys have been down to the park, but we've got a new trail going through the park with some asphalted surfaces. It's a nice little walk. If we could get rid of some of the duck poop on the walk, it would be even better, but nice job by the park staff. I just want to compliment you there.
Good, Councillor. Councillor Hoyle?
Thanks, staff, for taking care of all that I brought forward over the past couple weeks. Thanks.
Thank you. Councillor Bodnar?
All good.
Thank you. Now we're on to consideration of items requiring separate discussion. This is item 9.3. Recommendation report for a draft plan of subdivision and zoning bylaw amendment for Northland Estates. Recommendation that Development and Legislative Services Department Planning Division Report 2023-194 be received. The council approve. Uh-oh, somebody changed something here. The council approved the zoning bylaw amendment attached as Appendix A of Planning Division Report 2023-194, rezoning the lands from residential. Somebody keeps, you guys playing with us? Keeps disappearing on me. Rezoning the lands from residential development RD, third density residential R3, and environmental conservation EC zones to R3-73 third density residential special MU74 mixed use special EC environmental conservation and P public and park zones. The council approved the draft plan of subdivision and associated conditions attached as Appendix B of Planning Division Report 2023-194, approving the Northland Estates draft plan of subdivision and associated draft plan conditions, and to set a lapsing date of September the 26th of 2026. If I could have Councilors Bruno and Danch move that. Councilor Bruno, you're the only one that put your name forward for this.
Yes,
Question?
thank you, Worship. I just wanted to compliment staff for moving on this development. I know there earlier had been some concerns in the neighborhood. I haven't heard any of yet, so I don't know if the pre-consultation or if you have, but again, I haven't heard any issues from the neighborhood. If there are, I'm sure your office is open to that. So thank you for bringing this forward and moving forward on another development in Port Colborne. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor. Any further questions? Seeing none, all in favor? That's carried. Next, we have City of Port Colborne Growth Analysis Review. And before I get into the recommendation, we do have Mr. Long, there's a presentation.
It's colleague Ms. Landry.
Sorry. Ms. Landry?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. We have two speakers this evening to speak on behalf of the presentation and the staff report from Dillon Consulting, Kelly Martel and Anthony Lorius. If they could come forward and present, that would be great.
Perfect, thank you.
Tell people if they hear 10 seats up here, do they care?
For those standing in the back, there are empty seats in the front if you want to sit down. Go ahead. Welcome.
Thank you. Thanks very much to the Mayor and Council for having us here to present the City of Port Colborne growth analysis. If we can get to the next slide. What we'd like to do, take you quickly through a bit of a project overview, outline some of the key findings, talk about some of the growth management implications generally, and then after I go through some of the growth metrics, I'm going to hand it over to my colleague Kelly to talk a little bit about recommendations and the next steps as it relates to the official plan review. So if we can go one more. As a lot of you may know, historically, when we go back to, say, the 90s, the city has not played a major role in accommodating growth. If you look at the census numbers, the population since about 1996 has remained stable at around 18,500, going up and down by a couple of hundred per census period. Although what we saw in the most recent period, particularly in the 2021 census, is that we've seen a bit of an uptick and a shift away from the longer term trends. We'll get to some of those metrics. We talk about them in the report, and we'll show a few later on in the presentation. We have seen the population go from about 18,500 up to, I think the current population is just over 20,000 as per the 2021 census. And we've also seen some other indicators. You see it in the permits, you see it in the starts, we see it in development interest, we see it also in sort of continued economic development efforts. And arising out of some of these trends, both quantitative and qualitative, was concern that the regional forecast allocations in the regional official plan were somewhat understated. So Dillon was retained to undertake an analysis of growth options and provide some guidance on implementing the results. It's okay. In terms of the regional and local policy context, we'll talk about the provincial situation in a moment. The regional context, being the upper tier, is responsible, among other matters, for allocating at the time, the growth plan forecast to the local area municipalities. And we've shown those in the table at the bottom. The regional population forecast in 2051, and these numbers might seem familiar to you, is about 694,000 with an employment of 272,000 and just under 300,000 housing units. The allocation of growth to the city, of course, consistent with historic trends, is for a relatively limited amount of growth. We have about 3% of the regional forecast across population, employment, and the housing units. When you look at the region's land needs work, they were, keep in mind, working within the control total of the growth plan forecasts, and so basing it on historic trends is the way that they make everything add up. So in the context of the conformity exercise that was undertaken at the regional level and sort of the historic census trends, these are reasonable allocations of growth based on historic trends, but don't necessarily take into account sort of the more recent uptake that we've seen. At the local level, of course, the city official plan needs to be brought into conformity with the region's plan, and we're not talking about expansions at this point because there is a fair amount of capacity for growth, but there is, and the region's work is done, so we're not suggesting that we go back and redo the region's work, but there is an opportunity for the city to take a bit more of an aspirational approach, and when it comes to the upcoming official plan review, incorporate some higher numbers into the outlook for the community. If we can go to the next slide. In addition to sort of the local and regional context, as many of us know, we are sort of heading into a bit of an uncertain time currently in provincial policy. It seems to change weekly with the recent Greenbelt controversy, but specifically in terms of long-range planning for Niagara region and this community, we have a proposed provincial planning statement which really represents a significant departure from the way we've been doing planning in the past. The municipalities are no longer limited to having lands for up to 25 years. It is now planning for lands at least 25 years. Planning can extend beyond, in this case, the 2051 horizon for infrastructure purposes or other long-range plannings. The concept of the municipal comprehensive review has also not been carried forward, which ultimately, in its current form as proposed, will make urban expansions somewhat less controlled and easier to approve. It'll also probably facilitate more in the way of employment land conversions. But really, that's going to have some significant implications for planning at the local level and definitely needs to be taken into account as far as the OP update. We're expecting that the PPS will be finalized at some point in the fall. We don't know exactly what it will say, but the suspicion is that it will be finalized largely in the form that we see it today. So it's going to have implications for how we plan going forward. Very quickly on the project findings. There are a number of ways that we can show this, as I indicated earlier. We've chosen to show the permits, which show the uptick. We have, you can see from the graph, just a general rise in residential permits from 2011 up to 2021. But it also shows up in general development interest. It shows up in the housing starts. It shows up in the population figures. So there is this sense that the uptick represents a trend and an acceleration of growth locally that isn't necessarily captured in the region's numbers. So in order to help illustrate that, if we can go to the next slide, we have created sort of a capacity analysis to illustrate the upper limit of growth that could be possible on the residential side. And that's for approximately 6,500 units, which is made up of a few pieces that we've shown. When you look at the housing forecast, which is explained in the staff report, the regional forecast is for about 2,300 units over the period to 2051. And based on our analysis, we have over 4,000 units in the development pipeline right now. So there are more units that are currently in the development pipeline now than the region is forecast for the entire period to 2051. So there is merit to the suspicion or the trend that there might be more growth happening here than the region has allocated. There's also an additional 1,800 units on the vacant land and another 510 units through intensification. So the total unit potential is about 6,500. And we've provided a breakdown on the slide in terms of how those units are allocated in terms of policy area. And it's generally what one would expect. We have most of the low density and the medium density units in the DGA, which is the designated greenfield area, which is where you find most of your ground-related housing supply, which are the singles and the semis. And then within the built-up area, we have a higher focus on higher density units. So we have somewhat lower density, more apartment units in the built-up area. And that's consistent with the pattern that we see across communities all through Southern Ontario. Those capacity numbers are how we sort of build the new population forecast. We take the existing units at 2021, we add the capacity, we make some adjustments for the non-household population, and then that's where we get the additional population growth that's talked about in the staff report, which is approximately 15,000 people higher than the forecast in the regional allocation. Now, of course, those population numbers flow through to the employment forecast, And when we look at the 2021 census, we find that employment is also sort of ahead of where the region has it. But that's because the region's numbers were prepared before the 2021 census came out, so I'm not sure that we should be reading too much into that. But the employment is performing, sort of overperforming as well on the residential side. But the big takeaway from this graph is really the impact of COVID. You can see we've had a reduction in the total place of work by about 17%. Almost all of that's been picked up by work at home and the no fixed place. So you can really see in the census information the shifts in the employment base because of the lockdowns imposed by the pandemic. When we look at the population in 2051 on a capacity basis, if we maintain the activity rate, which is the ratio of employment to population at about 32%, that allows us to estimate the 2051 employment at about 11,700, which is roughly 3,000 or 4,000 jobs higher than, again, as allocated in the regional total. So we've structured it to maintain consistency with the region's work. Mainly where the impact comes is on the population-related side, and the ratio of population-related, which is like retail, institutional, and healthcare, that tends to be relatively stable over time, so we can apply ratios to estimate population-related employment. We agree with the region's work that there's likely not a potentially huge amount of major office growth, although there will be some smaller office space throughout local retail strips and that type of thing. We've maintained the rural employment, and then the employment land employment is treated sort of as a residual. So the outlook for all types of employment increases. There's a forecast for growth across all economic sectors, just not in the major office buildings, which are the big 20,000 square foot buildings that are measured in the growth plan. So on the residential side, what this analysis shows is really that there is likely a potential for the town to outpace the regional growth expectations. It's quite likely that the city will achieve an ultimate number at 2051 that's higher than shown in the region's work. And of course, this translates into a different pace of growth, a different community, and a lot of growing development pressure over time. So we'll continue to see a broad mix of built forms, higher densities, continued intensification. There's also, although we are sort of in a bit of a softening market at the moment with interest rates, the longer term outlook remains quite positive. Affordability, unfortunately, is going to remain a challenge under pretty much any growth circumstance. And so continued cost spillovers from the central areas of the Greater Toronto Area, especially to the west, Hamilton, Niagara, are going to continue to make communities like this one very attractive for housing growth, especially for ground-related housing, primarily to accommodate demands of young families and the aging of the population as boomers downsize into more into higher density housing. So it's very important from an OP perspective to ensure that the city is well positioned to take advantage of these opportunities. And that's why it's very important to be talking about the approaches that we're taking to the official plan and how we're going to structure the official plan to make sure that we're in the best position possible to accommodate what we expect will be sort of more growth than the region is allocated. On the employment side, again, I wouldn't read too much into the numeric difference, but it does look like the community is slightly higher ahead on the employment. We're looking at growth across all of the sectors, and as I indicated before, the population-related growth is going to put pressure on the retail and the institutional and the healthcare. We also expect, although we haven't done a detailed forecast, we expect that there is going to be continued growth in marine-related jobs, just as a matter of course, but also arising out of the recent investments in the canal. We can't imagine a situation where that doesn't downstream result in more jobs on the industrial side, but also on the knock-on effects on retail activity, cruise ship businesses, and supporting marine-related uses. So maybe not quite as much as the residential side. On the employment land side, one of the things that the new provincial policy statement is very likely to do is to really shift the context from what in Ontario for a very long time has been a supply-constrained growth management situation where we try to clamp down on the greenfield supply to encourage more intensification, and that is the tool that we use to shift the market. Under the changes that are likely to occur, we've sort of removed that supply constraint. So now, maybe not necessarily an oversupply situation is going to exist across the Greater Golden Horseshoe, but it's certainly going to become more of a situation where it's about land readiness It's about being able to accommodate the demand. It's about having shovel-ready supply, especially on the industrial side, to accommodate the opportunities that are coming down the pipe. So with that sort of broad growth context, I know it's a lot to take in, and I'm happy to take questions after. I will ask my colleague Kelly to talk about some of our recommendations for the official plan.
Sure. Thank you so much, Anthony. Through our work, we have identified 7 key recommendations for the city to consider and incorporate through various departmental work programs. Many of these are going to be best addressed through the official plan. However, some will be best addressed through other departments and projects and cross-collaboration between those departments and a lot of information sharing. Ultimately, I'm going to go through these recommendations one by one, but it's going to be important for the city now to make some key decisions about future growth and invest in developing that new official plan to clearly articulate your future vision so that the policies therein can guide, implement, and achieve that vision. So, first recommendation we will go on to is defining and implementing the city's vision for growth. So this is our first recommendation, and Anthony spoke a little bit about the timing and cadence with which the region's municipal comprehensive review has been done, and now it is time for the local municipalities to implement through a conformity exercise the region's numbers. This is something that the city will need to do over the short term. And while the region's work is complete and in effect, the city is going to have to incorporate those population projections, but there is nothing stopping the city from applying aspirational targets that would be more in alignment with the development growth analysis we are seeing in our report. And the city can use the findings of this report to assign these aspirational targets to guide local decision making, including ensuring appropriate funds are allocated to support key priority infrastructure investments, growth-related projects, parks, community facilities, recognizing you are on track to achieve and exceed what the region projected at the time it projected with the data it had. This is also going to help position the city respond to potential unknowns in the market and sensitivities in the future. Next is recommendation 2, which is to establish a robust urban hierarchy through the official plan that would identify priority areas for growth and an intensification strategy. And what I'll say right now is what we found through our work is that the city identifies 2 conceptual intensification areas, but they aren't delineated specifically, and there is a loose policy framework to guide that intensification. But as we move forward into this new era of growth that the city is seeing, it's going to be important through the OP process to ask these key critical questions. Are these the only 2 priority growth areas? How should they be delineated? Are there other key nodes or key corridors in the area that we should be focusing as priority areas for growth? How can we do that? Answer those questions and implement policy in the OP that will get us to where we need to be in 2051 to support that balanced and connected city. Next slide, please. Third recommendation is identifying policy opportunities to diversify the city's housing stock. Like Anthony mentioned, the city is primarily right now composed of single detached dwellings. I believe the 2021 census indicates you're about 70% single detached. What we know is there are affordability challenges in the city and broader. It is not a unique circumstance to Port Colborne, but certainly something we need to think about. What is a bit more unique about the city of Port Colborne is your aging population, and there is currently a lack of diversity in the housing typologies to allow boomers like Anthony to age into a more appropriate downsized development, because right now that mix isn't there. So what we're recommending is there are some policy options and levers we can pull to address that, such as establishing housing mix targets that would shift the balance more toward medium density and higher density typologies. I'm talking townhouses, stacked townhouses, low-rise apartments. We don't foresee Port Colborne becoming a high-rise area, but certainly a mix beyond the single detached form. What could also be done is implementing policies that support affordable housing development, inclusive of those recommendations in your recently endorsed and approved housing strategy, as well as reducing or eliminating single-family zoning and expanding permissions for blending the medium and higher density uses at the periphery of neighborhoods and in other areas where appropriate. And what I will say is that all of this in the OP is a good place to start, but it's also going to need to be supported by other tools, such as the Community Improvement Plan, which our colleague Luch spoke about earlier today. So that's actually a very timely confluence of events, which wasn't planned, but good for context. Our next recommendation is to develop a framework for assessing compatibility of redevelopment and intensification at the periphery of identified intensification areas, nodes, corridors, and other priority areas for growth. So there are a number of distinct neighborhoods in this city that are located within and on the periphery of your existing conceptual intensification areas. But there might be others through the OP work where you're finding, okay, this is a priority growth area for us now and into the future, but there is some existing stable residential area that we need to ensure that there is a protection for that transition, especially where there are heritage buildings of interest, either listed locally or designated under the Heritage Act. So that will ensure the city can manage neighborhood change in a way that balances this new type of growth with what you have historically seen. And this would need to be done with a mindset and a policy framework in your official plan that acknowledges that compatible doesn't necessarily mean the same as, but identifying key thresholds staff can use, such as street typologies, angular plane, building length, and building separation to mitigate impacts. And right now, the city doesn't have that in their official plan to manage the change that is likely to come and is in some respects already here. Next recommendation is to align the employment lands planning framework with the economic development strategy. Anthony spoke a lot about this. It's the need to be investment ready. There is a potential for accelerated growth in the community, and in turn, from an economic development perspective, the city is going to need to ensure it can provide a suitable supply of employment lands to accommodate new business investment. And this is really going to be ensuring that you have an appropriate range and mix of parcel sizes to seize these shovel-ready opportunities and making sure that the city is investment ready. And this does include a number of the things on the slide here, which I will not read, but they're there for your reference. Next, it's going to be very important as the city transitions into this new phase of growth to build staff capacity. You are going to need to ensure your staffing complement is able to respond to development pressures, juggling that with timely responses to development applications under the Planning Act. You have a legislated time frame, and at some point the province will start clawing back your money if you don't get the decisions on time. As well as working on getting your official plan up to date. There's a lot of balls that the city is going to need to juggle over the next several years. And in that respect, we anticipate that the current staffing complement is not going to be able to handle all of that. So there is going to be a need to consider either adding new resources to balance the policy planning, which is the official plan, and then following the official plan, the zoning bylaw, secondary plans, with the active development applications that you need to process out the door within 120 days or 90 days, as the case may be. And then there may need to be further support by consultant assistants to help with that where staff capacity is not able to meet demand for whatever reason. Finally, our last recommendation is to monitor the progress of the development tracking database. So what I'll say is at the outset of this project, we received a robust data set from the city for our analysis. It required a lot of data scrubbing, quality checks, and ground truthing by the team. This isn't uncommon. We get data in all different shapes and forms from municipalities, and it is our job to scrub it and make sure our analysis is as accurate as possible. But it doesn't always, the data we get at first doesn't always translate to the methodologies we use to determine demand, capacity, and what meets the definition of development pipeline. So what we would recommend is that the city look to specifically our recommendation 7 in terms of how they can improve monitoring and tracking development applications across the organization so everyone is on the same page with the same set of numbers, making decisions to inform infrastructure planning to support new growth, parks planning to support new growth. So everything is in alignment. And that, I think, concludes my recommendations. If we want to go to the next slide, next steps. I talked a lot about this. I think the critical key next step is initiating that official plan review process, and this is underway. That's in the report, and updating the DC bylaw and the rec master plan, and now we are complete. We want to go to next. Thank you. We'll take questions.
Great, thank you. I do have a recommendation that Development and Legislative Services Department Planning Division Report 2023-158 be received for information. If I could have Councillors Bruno and Bagu move that. Councillor Bruno, questions?
Thank you, Worship. Mary, I don't know if you can take that back to recommendation 1. Thank you. I've sat through a number of presentations through the years and things that come down from the province and the region. You guys have been charged with doing our work for our growth plan. And so I'm assuming that yours is a more intense, granular view of our situation, and the region's done a broad, more higher level one. I can't comprehend that the region of Niagara would do a growth study plan just prior to a census when they could have better data. It just strikes me as that our plan, which has been looked at under a magnifying glass, and other municipalities, doesn't go up to the region, and then they could critique everybody's plan and decide whether it's good or not. But what I want to know, point 1, implement Niagara Region's OP, minimum population allocations, density targets, intensification targets in the Port Colborne OP. I don't agree. You probably don't agree. Probably everybody in this room who's lived here or looks at that and says, things have happened in the last 3 years that haven't happened in the last 50 years. And we know they're not making any more land, and we know the housing shortage, and we know things are moving this way. But we're going to implement bad data into our plan So my question is, what if we don't implement Niagara Region's growth targets? Because we have our own, and my worry is people from outside the region, people at the province, they're not looking at Port Colborne's growth targets. They're looking at the regions for what's going around there. If we implement that, we're complicit in adopting their plan. So my question is, enough is enough. I don't want to implement bad data. We just paid you guys to do good data, and now somebody's going to read that plan that's going to have an effect on Port Colborne, whether it's at the province, amalgamation, funding, a highway, everything else, and they're going to stop looking. It's like Google. They're going to stop looking once they found an answer, and they're going to find the Niagara Region's answer. And if they do take the time to come to our site, they're going to look at us adopting what the region says. So, plain and simple, I want to know what happens if we don't agree.
I can start and then if you
Okay.
want to jump in.
Sure.
Through the mayor, I'll start as a planner, and then Anthony can take it from the economic development lens. From the planning perspective, I'll say that the targets assigned to you by the region are minimums. There is nothing holding you back from exceeding the minimum. And that is what we can do in your official plan. We can say, here are the targets that we must achieve, but actually, here are our targets that we are striving for and we are planning for. They exceed the regions, and that's okay because the region says they are minimums, and we're going to go on the basis that we believe we are going to exceed the minimums. So you can do that, but for the purposes of conformity, you do need to include their minimum targets, but you can exceed them within reason as long as you can justify it, which we have laid out a number of scenarios in our report. We don't know the exact time at which you're going to hit your 6,000 units. It could be 2051, it could be 2061, it could be 2042. So we can, through this exercise at the local level, through our granular level analysis, assign a more specific target that is grounded in reality that you guys can use. Recognizing the regions has a lot of other factors, but you do have to apply the minimum, but you can exceed the minimum. Anthony, is there anything else you want to add?
No, I think Kelly has covered it well. Through the mayor, a few thoughts. You would be surprised how accurate a lot of the conformity work throughout the greater Golden Horseshoe has been with respect to like how close the 2021 numbers are. Like the population and household numbers, even though they were prepared before the census was released, there's all sorts of other information that's available, like household completions and person per unit factors, and you can actually estimate that pretty well. So we are not so much concerned with the fact that these conformity exercises were created prior to the release of the 2021 census. Everybody was under a lot of pressure, and there was a lot of that going on at the same time. So we're not too concerned about the accuracy of that. What's important, I think, to keep in mind is that when you look at the growth plan for the Greater Golden Horseshoe, there's a page in there called Schedule 3, which are the forecast numbers, and that was the core, that was the regional plan. Right? There's great language and there's great words about sustainable communities and intensification and transit and density intensification, but it was those numbers held it together. And I remember being in hearings where there was a debate about, are those numbers targets or are they forecasts? They're forecasts, right? The intensification target is a target, the DGA density is a target, targets to be exceeded. But the forecast is the forecast, meaning that it all has to add up. There's only so much immigration, there's only so much share that comes to Ontario, there's only so much that can be distributed. So when regional governments are doing the conformity exercise, they're guided by the forecast. And in Niagara, regionally, they added a couple of extra pieces for, I think it was Lincoln and Wainfleet, to reflect sort of a similar situation that we see here. But It's because the numbers, the genesis of those numbers is because they're within a control total. And one of the changes that really sort of decoupled that the provincial administration made before its most recent foray into controversy was that they changed those targets to be minimums. And so that really loosened up the required adherence to a specific number. They then, in the latest version of the growth plan, they too became targets as well. So these are targets that can be achieved. So the local official plan has to have a nod to the regional conformity exercise that these are the forecasts, and we recognize that it came out of a control total based analysis, but there's nothing in the regional plan that prevents the municipality from planning for higher numbers as long as no expansion is contemplated, and as long, more importantly, as there is a servicing plan, a phasing plan, and at the end of the day, a result that doesn't run afoul of the many other regional objectives in the plan as well. So this is all going to be even sort of more flexible when we see the new PPS, which proposes to reduce whatever was left holding us to, again, that former land constrained scenario. So some of the constraints that you may have in mind in terms of limiting growth in Port Colborne are just simply no longer going to be there. What will be important, though, is making sure that the official plan is structured in a way that the region will approve and the province will approve, and you will probably, I should have put this number one, plan a community that you want over time.
Councillor?
So getting back to it, what happens if we don't put it in?
Then you put it in the region's hands and the province's hands and hope that they do what you want. And what we have seen is that the province has not always done that. Good example, City of Hamilton. They stayed firm on no expansion, and the province expanded their boundaries. So the decision was totally removed from them.
Councillor?
So what happens if we put a disclaimer in there? We don't, as a municipality, don't agree with this. Please see the Dillon plan. I mean, after all, guys, that's what we paid you to give us true, accurate data. And now we're just capitulating. Like, our data matters. Like, I get where they're coming from, but they based it on a historical trend that is no more. I mean, companies today don't even plan after 5 years. The world's changing that fast. We're staking our reputation. Well, it's our reputation and yours that says things are different. I worry that people stop reading that at the first page. Where they'll start reading it is if there's a disclaimer there, or it isn't there. Because, you know, so much of this is based on confidence, dealing from strength, what other people think of it. And if you're not willing to put your own self out, you know, I'm not going to rely on the region to do it. And I'm just not satisfied that that has to be the status quo when we know it isn't. And so I'd be happy for language that's a disclaimer to that points to the reader right away, look at, you know, Appendix A, and it's your plan. And B, I'm not bothered by disagreeing with them, and let the province decide. Because if anything, it'll just bring Port Colborne attention, and we're not just going to sit around and take it.
Kelly and Anthony?
Through the mayor, there are certain legislative requirements under the Planning Act that any planner would need to meet in terms of crafting their official plan and what the minimum things need to be in it. But through the engagement process and the writing process, which would be on the onus of the city's planners to do, through conversations with the region and engagement with the community, there may be an opportunity to provide some sort of flexible language that states your position in a more firm way that would still meet the purpose and intent of achieving the minimums, but we are exceeding them, and exceeding them is okay. So it's not an answer maybe you're looking for, but it's the best answer I can give. But I would defer to Ms. Landry to shed any more light on how the upper tier, lower tier function works here.
Through the mayor, I think Ms. Martell explained that in fantastic detail. I think kind of as through the process, we're going to be kicking off the engagement process of the official plan in the coming month. And I think through those conversations, we can elaborate on this and see and come together as a community and hear the feedback. So I think we can kind of work through this component. Just chatting with David through Messenger, we hear what you're saying and we both agree. But I think there'll be a key way to message it to make sure that our plan still gets through and approved by the region and subsequently through the province.
Yes, remember, Councillor, I mean, we are only receiving this tonight, so, staff is going to take our comments here this evening and reformulate this so that when it does come back and working with Dylan, that those things will be put into our plan. So, go ahead.
Can Dylan help craft that language? Are you okay with that?
Through the mayor, Dylan is certainly okay with that, subject to being awarded the job, but it's going to have to go through a competitive.
I don't know if we need a whole new contract for some wordsmithing on one, but I hear you.
It's not, but it's not through this process. It would be through the official plan process, which is the Determining of the Planning Act. It's the whole thing,
Yeah.
but we would be happy to help.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Okay. You all set? Okay. No, I meant Denise. Yeah. Councillor Bagu.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through you to Dylan Consulting. Have your company done another growth analysis in any other municipality in the Niagara region?
Through the mayor, we have done work for the city of Niagara Falls through their housing strategy, looking specifically at their intensification, not a full-scale growth analysis to this extent, because it was scoped to their built-up area and their intensification areas, not greenfield, not everything. That is based on my tenure, the only one that I've dealt with in Niagara, other than this one. I have also done one in North Middlesex. We've done Whitchurch-Stouffville's, but Whitchurch-Stouffville was, again, scoped to the growth areas and not the whole city. I don't know. I've only been with Dylan for 3 years, so I don't know if we've done more than that. But part of my time at Dylan, I worked for West Lincoln and the region of Niagara as well. I'm from here, so.
I know you are.
I know the area,
Yeah.
and Anthony has done this all over.
Thank
Councillor?
you. Just a comment, Mr. Mayor. We've had disagreements with the region before, example, over employment lands. What we think is employment lands and what they think are employment lands is two different things. And I can see we might have a problem with our growth analysis and their growth analysis for funding for different projects. They'll say, well, Port Colborne, you're not going to grow for a while, so we're going to give the funding to St. Catharines or Niagara Falls. We always get everything. So just a comment, Mr. Mayor. So I guess that's how we got you and the Niagara Regional Council to fight for us.
And we won on the employment land issue. We got what we wanted on that with the work of staff. So will it work with funding coming down? I think we're surpassing funding that'll be coming through from Niagara in the next few years based on the numbers that Dylan has and based on the numbers that Mr. Long put together that the region does know about. Mr. Shapowski is working with Public Works on a number of these issues based on, especially with housing going in the ground and the number of subdivisions that are there with regards to sewer, water, and stormwater systems. So I don't believe that the numbers the region came up with, because it was prior to the release of the new census, we can make sure that the region, and through staff, that the region receives our report, and that this is where our trajectory is going. And you know, if you listen from Mayor Uglini from the GTA, the Greater Thorold area, not the Greater Toronto area, Mayor Uglini and I have led the parade with regards to growth within our two municipalities as leaders within Niagara, as the two fastest growing communities within Niagara region. So yeah, you're seeing municipalities look towards the south end now, Fort Erie, Welland, Port Colborne, Pelham, Thorold, you know, and the way we're growing a lot faster than they ever thought. I mean, if you look back to the years when Mayor Badaway was here, we had the Grow South program. Then when he left, the council of the day decided to, not the council here, the council of the region decided to kind of throw that out and only concentrate on the north end. And that's reversing again, because they are, I mean, St. Catharines is built out. They have very little room to build on the housing side and even commercial industrial. Niagara Falls, the city of Niagara Falls owns 0 acreage on industrial. So, you know, they're having a tough time with that. They've got tons of housing, very similar to us. So, yeah, you're seeing the region look at where the growth is coming and how we present, especially with Councillor Davies and I up there, and then what we take from staff. So I think we'll be fine on that front. And you're going to see some stuff come forward the next year or so that's going to surprise a lot of people living in Port Colborne. Thank you, Councillor.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Further questions? Anything else? You're set?
No.
Ms. Landry, you're all set? Okay, hearing no more questions, all those in favor to receive, that's carried. Okay, 9-4. Okay, next up is item 9.1, follow-up report to 2023-143 amendments to the discharge of firearms bylaw. Before I read the recommendation, I just want to clarify something. We've received hundreds of emails from one organization that quite frankly came out with false information. At no time, and we'll hear from the executive of the Conservation Club, at no time was ever discussed in this chamber or in any meetings we've had with the Conservation Club's board of directors that we were trying to shut the club down. So we received a ton of emails from, quite frankly, all across the land. I don't know where that came from, but it's false information. Also, there was an article in the paper that was totally false, and it talked about what council was doing. Again, the reporter obviously wasn't paying attention or watching another municipality, I don't know, but it was totally false. I just want to confirm that, and I did speak with Stephen and Tom with regards to that. So I just want to clarify that, because it is upsetting to council when we receive emails that is trying to tell people that we're doing something that we're actually not. So the recommendation, council, is that Community Safety and Enforcement Department Bylaw Services Report 2023-175 be received, and that bylaw 70266322, being a bylaw to regulate the discharge of firearms and bows in the city of Port Colborne, be amended to include the Port Colborne and District Conservation Club's trap and skeet shooting schedule as Schedule F, and the bylaw 70266322, being a bylaw to regulate the discharge of firearms and bows in the city of Port Colborne, be amended to allow for penalties under the administrative penalty system for non-parking offenses, and that bylaw 69022 being a bylaw to establish a system for administrative penalties for non-parking offenses within the city of Port Colborne, be amended to change Schedule B as attached as Appendix C to this report, and that it be approved. I have councillors Aquilina and Bodner moving that. I'm going to go to delegations at this time. So this time, if I can have Stephen Ward, President, and Mr. Tom Napper, Vice President of the Port Colborne District Conservation Club, come up to the podium, please. Welcome, gentlemen.
Thank you. Mayor Steele and councilors, thanks for having us today. The Port Colborne District Conservation Club has been a member of Port Colborne and Niagara area since the early 60s. The club has been actively promoting conservation, education, outdoor recreation in the area throughout its history, and is an active member of the Ontario Federation of Hunters and Anglers. On the 28th, the membership had a general election to replace the executive. Tom Napper, Vice President, myself, Steve Ward as President, Robert Ricci as our Treasurer, and Janet Martin as our Secretary. The new Executive Board and over 60 members of the Port Colborne Conservation Area are committed to maintain an active and positive presence in the Port Colborne and Niagara region through promotion of conservation, outdoor recreation, including hunting, fishing, archery, education, and the shooting sports. Past highlights of the clubs include funding of youth archery scholarships, post-secondary scholarships, funding for the fishing docks in Port Colborne, stocking walleye in the Welland River, which I believe the numbers were about 5,000 this year, participating in Sports Fest by offering introductory trap, skeet shooting, organizing kids and fishing derbies, running the 444 walleye tournament, tree planting, use of the club facilities to Girl Guides and Boy Scouts, and maintaining a forest managed for wildlife on the club property. The conservation area has promoted the shooting sports by offering an archery range and competitions, air gun ranges and competitions, and the club has operated trap and skeet ranges on the property since the early 60s. The shooting sports are also promoted by offering hunter and gun safety courses and youth activities. While the new board we're newly elected, we have many experienced members who are enthusiastic that the club continue and expand its role in the community. In order to maintain the club, the current membership dues cover approximately 25% of the operating costs. Revenue from the shooting sports, air gun, trap, and skeet cover the remainder of the operating expenses and allow the conservation area to provide services to the community and region. To allow the club to be financially viable, the executive of the Port Conservation Area respectfully requests the City of Port Colborne to amend the report 023-143 Port Colborne and District Conservation Club and the discharge of firearms 2023 to allow weekly trap and skeet shooting at the club and not regulate air guns. The proposed trap and skeet schedule would be shooting on the first and third Saturday and the second and fourth Sunday of each month. The change to shooting on Saturdays is the request of members who attend church on Sundays. Also new members that are church members that want to come out on a Saturday and shoot, and also open up during the week 1 or 2 times a month for educational process for safe handlings of firearms for newer shooters that are too intimidated to go to other clubs. It's a little quieter. They can get one-on-one guidance and instruction from somebody at a facility that they feel more comfortable at, where it's not as fast-paced. We're just a little smaller club, and it's more comfortable for some new shooters to come out and do that. So that being said, we want to assure to the City of Port Colborne that the goals of the club will promote conservation and continue to be a strong partner with the City of Port Colborne. And some of the things we touched on, I just want to reiterate. Port Colborne Conservation offers, the conservation area offers a safe environment for shooting sports in a facility that's approved by the CFO with a range officer, with experienced instructors. We are a member of the OF, the Ontario Federation of Anglers and Hunters. I just want to not do too many acronyms here. We want those people to come in and feel comfortable and safe. But we want to do these courses also in communication, and have asked earlier some of the council members to help us bridge the gap in communication with the neighbors, so that we've been asked specifically not to speak to one particular neighbor, we want them and have asked them to bridge that gap of communication so that we can get around some of the difficulties that they feel they're having. We want to get these programs back in order. These Trap and Skeet definitely pays for a lot of the other programs and things that go on out there. And that is the hatchery, archery, which is in need of a pretty big upgrade, airsoft, and so on. We've also looked at, and I have been active in bringing in new business. We last spoke, I said I would be looking at bringing new business into the club. I have a letter from the RC clubs in the area that's remote control vehicles. One of the members has also built a remote control vehicle that some of the kids can come out and use, going through the woods, through the fields, and do rock crawling and things like that. So I said I would do that, and I've actively gone out and done that. I've run into a lot of obstacles along the way, some of them with passwords and changing over information, banking and all that stuff, and we're stabilized that. We are in a good position right now. So we ask that you not regulate the airsoft. A gentleman was out yesterday. Some of them people are going all the way out to Ancaster and doing their airsoft shooting, and they can be doing it right in our backyard. So they're taking all that money and going to another community, and they're driving a half hour, an hour to do it. And I just don't get why they're not doing it here. And along with our archery, why isn't our archery still happening out there? Why aren't our Boy Scouts out there? Why aren't our Girl Guides out there? So I've put calls into all of those people, and I'm waiting to hear back from them. But without the Trap and Skeet, we can't really develop any of these programs. We can't expand on them. We're barely just keeping alive and keeping the doors of the club open. So that being said, we want you to give the CFO the approval to come recertify our field. We want to look closely at our proposed new shooting schedule, and we want to get the club up and running and start building springboard off of these programs and onto new programs and new business out of the club. I think it could be just as strong or better than it has been in the last 60 years. I think you got some new members, some new executives that have some good ideas that are out there that are anxious to do stuff. The club's certainly taken a turn visually on you out there, as our work party was very successful last week. So here we stand. Where do we go from here?
Okay, thanks, gentlemen. Questions from council? Councilor Danch.
Good turnout, good information. So you guys want to shoot on Saturday and Sunday, correct?
Alternating Saturdays and Sundays. So one week it would be a Saturday, next week it would be a Sunday. That's our proposed shooting schedule.
And those would be days, they wouldn't be airsoft, right? They would be...
That would be Trap or Skeet.
Okay.
Right. And also allow for times during the week where we could communicate with the neighbors. Say if they're at work 9 to 5, we could go out and do some introductory courses, training courses for new members, PAL courses. There's hunter safety courses, safe handling of firearms, and so on and so forth. So it wouldn't be a full trap shooting round. They would go one station, 2 shots, next station, so that they would understand the process. So when they do go to another club to compete, that they're familiar with the process and they're not overwhelmed or intimidated by it.
Like 5 or 6 times a year.
Yeah, it's not a huge thing, but we like to have the ability to do that. I don't think we're going outside of our bylaws to do that, our current bylaws.
Councilor, you're set. Further questions? Councilor Baggy.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through you, the airsoft shooting, does that have to be approved by the CFO also to have that?
Our range, I believe, has to be approved by the CFO, so that's been cleared. The targets are not out yet, but it's a series of stations they go to and shoot at targets. Same with the archery. We want to have that set up a lot like, let's call it 18 holes of golf, where you go to a different hole every shoot a different shot, so on and so forth. I'm not an archery expert, don't get me wrong, Mike. So that's how we see it happening.
Counselor?
Thank you. One more question. The noise velocity of airsoft gun, what is it compared to, say, 410 shotgun?
You know what? There wouldn't be much different, I don't think. The airsoft, obviously, some of them are newer.
900 feet per second.
Yeah, they go anywhere 450 feet per second, so they give off a little bit of a bang, but I don't believe that I can answer accurately. It's not deafening. And compared to a 410 shotgun, I wouldn't say they're much different.
Much softer of a shot.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, Counselor Bruno?
Thank you for your presentation. Question I have is, we all know this club's been around for a number of years, and in the past it's done a lot of the things you alluded to and was maintained and all that. And yet they had these sort of, I'll say, hours and days that are now potentially changing. In other words, Saturdays, longer shoots. So what's changed that the hours that were in place sufficed for a number of years and the club prospered? So if you can, and maybe it's somebody else who needs to answer that question, but what's been the difference?
I think you're seeing more youth come out. I think you're seeing more growth in membership. I can tell you that I know everybody in the back of their mind, it's a noise of complaints, this and that, but during the winter time, and our current membership is a little bit older, it's a miserable day out. We don't see them out very often. There isn't a lot of shooting. And then some of those Sundays, we've been shut down by weather. So to have, the Saturday availability or a Sunday, I think we can kind of predict better when we can have more regular shoot, more stations filled.
I can add to that, Stevie.
What's that?
If you don't mind if I
Yeah.
answer that, Mr. Chair, ladies and gentlemen of the council. I agree. Our shotgun shooters have upped a bit. We've risen, but we've lost the 4-4. We no longer do the children's fishing derby. So our income basically is just the trap and skeet shooting. And yeah, we've got more interest in that, which is a great thing. We have new members, we have new ideas on conservation. Everyone that comes to the club is a conservationist. They all bring new ideas, and they're all very helpful. We had a cleanup day on Saturday. The place looks better than it's ever looked since I've been there, and I've been a member for 10 years. Like it's a good thing. We look at it, and it's money coming in.
Counselor?
I guess I'm still not clear in when the hours that have been there for the last number of years, the club survived. So maybe let me throw out some examples. Were they doing other things to raise money that now isn't in vogue now? So, it's tougher to get volunteers. It's whatever that is. I'm trying to understand how you did all those things. As a member of the community, you see it waning, right? Yep. But you see a lot of that happening in service clubs, cultural clubs, all across the whole gamut. And so I'm just wondering, I guess what I'm saying is, in your mind, can the club not reinvigorate those activities and still fit within the hours it always did and been successful as it was in the past?
I think that's a good question. It's an interesting question. From what I've seen since I've been there, the club has been pretty stagnant, and whether it's been in decline, I haven't seen maybe 1 or 2 people out there shooting archery. I have 10 people on my phone that want to get involved and come out and shoot archery. That's 10 new members. So I don't know if they were busier in other aspects and that generated more money into the club. We're interested in building and growing and getting more involved, and I think that you as council has seen less involvement with from the conservation area and the city. So I've seen that just my eyes, I've seen that kind of die off. I think that trap and skeet is really a springboard to grow in some of the other activities that are out there and some of the new business that I've been trying to bring in. So I think it's a great opportunity. We want to work with the neighbors. We want to be a good neighbor. We want to work with the city. We want to do all of that stuff. We want to keep more than just the lights on there and just the bill paid. You know what I mean? And there's been obstacles. I don't want to get into some of the elephants in the room. There's been some obstacles thrown up in front of us that I've, starting to overcome that I wasn't thinking I was going to have to address, but slowly I'm beating them down. And if we get a letter out to the CFO to get our range reapproved, get us up Trapsky, and you'll see a tide kind of move in where some of those other programs will start to get regenerated. It isn't going to happen overnight. Obviously, it isn't going to be snap your fingers and there's a super archery program or there's a super RC program or whatever. But slowly you're going to see those come back. Pretty committed to that.
Counselor, all set? Further questions at this time? Counselor Aquilina?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. To the presenter. Just to backtrack, 410, is that trap and skeet? Or shotgun? Okay. I wasn't sure what that was, sorry. When we met the other, I don't know, a week or so ago, you had presented to Councillor Bodner and I and the rest of the group a proposed new schedule. So that proposed new schedule also included increased in the time duration. So you were going from what's now 12 to 5 to 11 to 5, I think is what you had in there.
Yeah, I think that proposed schedule that I have in front of me has dates and it doesn't specifically have times. I think that in the past it's been, I have no times on mine. No, we weren't changing the times.
It was
because
at the top.
Nope.
The sheet you showed me,
Do you have
it
a
said
copy?
at the
There's a
top.
copy of it here. So there's no times on that.
Yeah, it was a little different, but anyways.
It is?
Yeah.
Well, then, this is the one that was resent to me from the original.
Okay.
We don't want to change the times. I think that the times 11 o'clock till 5 o'clock or whatever, 12 till 5. I mean, if we get more shooters, do we start a little bit earlier? Or is it bothering anybody? Can we consult with the neighbors if we expand the time an hour this way or an hour that way? We don't want to run into their dinner hour. We don't want to wake them up first thing in the morning. We don't specifically say we're a shooting club. We're a conservation area with a lot of clubs within the club. So that's why being a part of the good neighbor, not setting a time. I don't know if there was times on the one that we had before. I believe this is a copy of the original. I don't see any times on there. I don't want to go outside of really the hours that we're shooting now, unless we get an extra squad out there. So simple fact that a box of clays that they put out, just to give you an example, guys will go out and they'll shoot around a trap. The combined, they only made $10 off of that whole shoot. So
250 shells.
Yeah, so 15 minutes, we're making $10. So if we were to get guys up and do 4 shoots an hour, we're making $40, right? But is there potential for them now to go in and buy lunch? Well, hopefully that'll be happening soon, once we get the public health in there, which has been, somebody shut us down. So we're just trying to get the club going, make a little bit of money, make a little bit of profit for nonprofit organization to dump back into other programs. But I didn't, as far as being strict on hourly.
In one hand, you say you're not trying to close us down. But in the second hand, you're offering us 2 days a month. You are shutting us down. We can't exist with that. Right. Sorry.
So
it won't cover our expenses.
Okay.
Counselor?
So through you, Mr. Mayor, to the presenter, what was proposed in the bylaw is the exact schedule that the club has had for many years. It's increased in duration and time, but it's the same schedule that's been there for as long
It may
as.
be, but we have lost, as I said, we've lost all those extra monies coming in. The only thing we have left is trap shooting. And I also read your report that was sent to you, and it said no financial to spare. Well, it certainly isn't financial. It's costing us.
So that, with that schedule in place is when we've seen the conservation area slowly die and other programs die with that current schedule that they had for the last few years. This one here that we proposed isn't more than, I think, 10 or 12 hours more a month. That's
10
all.
10 hours a month.
10 hours a month is, the only added time. So they did start, without breaking any bylaws, shooting some of those days. There was one day that somebody shot, somebody made a phone call, and it was two people flexing their muscles. This got out of hand, and here we are today. So how do we rectify that? How do we get back to building this program and building the conservation back up?
And so I agree. I think the efforts that you're indicating that the club wants to do, I think are a good thing. I've had several residents from inside Port Colborne, inside Ward 4, and outside of Port Colborne who've reached out to me specifically. And I've encouraged some of them to join the club because they are interested not only in trap and skeet, but the conservation portion of it. So I think the club is a good thing, but I think in order for you to repair the damage that was done from the previous administration or members or whatever, I think that's going to take time. And I think you have to be able to demonstrate that you are trying to be a good neighbor I'm not against the club opening at all, and I'm not against any of that. I'm
sorry, are we saying that you want to regulate the times that the conservation area can operate? Is that what you're saying that you would like to do?
What I'm saying is I think that it's very imperative that the neighbors are on board for your club to succeed. And to be able to get the neighbors on board, you have to repair the damage that was caused. I don't think all of the neighbors are looking to close the club down at all, but I think there's some in-house cleanup that has to be done that we've talked about before. And I think over time, if you can demonstrate sticking to what the club's always had in place and not having rogue shooters shooting on a different day.
I think that when you say rogue shooters, that first of all, you're misinformed and it's a little misleading. We do, I think, have an opportunity to prove ourselves as good neighbors. I think we do have some rebuilding to do. That's why we're up here standing talking to you. I think that there's more programs that the community can and kids can benefit from this. So I'm asking you, how do we do that? Where do we go from here? Are you giving us an approval to have the CFO come out, recertify our field so we can start shooting again? Do we have one neighbor that's a problem? Because I believe all the other neighbors are here. Or do we have one neighbor that's got a cousin around the corner that they're calling, that, we're getting on a bandwagon here? Like, I've gone ahead and looked into some of the complaints under the Freedoms of Information Act from the city of Port Colborne and for the police of the complaints against the conservation area. And I got that report back today. And I have completed a review of the provisions under the MFIPPA, and it had made the following decision in response to your request. A total of 1 record has been identified as being responsive. So I'm not going to disclose that. I'm not allowed to disclose that. but I have done my due diligence. There isn't a whole pile of complaints against the conservation area. I guess we've gone out, we've done decibel readings at other clubs, we've done decibel readings of dump trucks going down the road, we've done readings and matched up readings with the RCMP, their readings on decibel noises and distances with no obstructions, similar demographic, like just so many different tests, and found that the noise levels on an average are much less at 150 yards or whatever. They're much less than two people standing talking in a room. So we have done a lot of due diligence here. I'm asking that we go back to a weekly shoot with raising some money, getting the club back and going with the odd educational program during the week, and proving and keeping in communication. And I've asked the council, a couple of members of the council, if they would help us bridge that communication with the neighbors. So, you know, are we willing to do that?
Questions, Councillor?
Sorry. So you're saying that you're going back to weekly. When did the club have weekly shooting?
We've been
Starting September.
September we were doing that.
And it has not been a complaint until, I believe, June of this year.
Yeah, and we were recertified by the CFO on February the 23rd. So they were shooting weekly for some time.
In September.
In September, and then hey, somebody got into a little bit of a disagreement. Everybody flexed their muscles, and here we are.
Like I
Shut down.
welcome everyone here. I know that you're not right up to speed on guns and airsoft and things, but honestly, anytime, you're welcome to come down, we can explain some stuff, have a look around and see what it's all about. I think you'd be totally shocked the way we run the club and what goes on there. Yeah, we have a lot of laughs and a lot of fun there, that we do. So,
Councillor, further questions?
Not at this time. I don't think I'm getting anywhere here.
That's fine. I'm looking for questions, guys. Councillor Bodner?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, through you to the presenters. I think your business plan is flawed. Your whole business plan is on shooting to raise funds. So you're going to raise it off the back of the neighbors that have a concern with what you're doing and the fact that it bothers them. Why don't you've got, how many members out here? You say you have 60. How many's here? Got to be about 60. Does everybody think that this is...
Questions to the speaker.
Okay, sorry.
I need questions. Thank you.
Does your group think this is a worthwhile club?
Definitely.
Do they? Okay.
So, you're
So-
asking...
Hey, guys, look at this is between representatives of the club and council. No comments. Thank you.
So here's a proposal. If the members think it's worthwhile, why don't the members put in some more money for dues? If everybody had $100, that's $6,000 to join the club.
So
if they think it's worthwhile to keep it going, why isn't that an option?
Wouldn't you believe that if you were buying or purchasing something that you would get a good product for your payout? So if they're only allowed to shoot, and we're limiting, a lot of clubs shoot 7 days a week, 7 a.m. till 11 o'clock at night, and they're allowed to do that. We're only offering 2 days a week with some safety courses and so on and so forth. They're not getting a lot for their money compared to going to another club. So how could we charge them that? And then not only do we charge them a fixed number for their membership, we also make sure that they join the Ontario Federation of Anglers and Hunters. So there's an additional cost to them. So I don't see that charging them more money and giving them less is going to be a benefit to us. But I don't see where we're going outside of our realm by shooting one day a week. It's not on the backs of our neighbors. I know that you feel that, and you mentioned something similar to me before. We're not doing anything on the backs of our neighbors. We're not taking away anything from the neighbors. As a matter of fact, we've invited them to join in,
Cutting our
and the
trees.
immediate neighbors are excited about coming in, the ones that are closer to the ones that have complained. So we're also worked with them over the weekend where we're going over to our neighbors, the membership, and offering their time for free, bringing down 5 trees that he feels is a threat over where he parks his recreational vehicle and a couple of trailers. So I say we're being good neighbors. I say we're going out of our way to help our neighbors. I say that we're not doing anything on the backs of our neighbors. I think maybe the neighbors are welcome to use our backs if they need it.
Thank you. Further question?
Sure, so the $100 also gets, if you're true to your word and you say this is a conservation club, it also gets the ability for our members to prove that this is a conservation club and get involved in some activities that may have been there before. And if you're talking archery, I know people that will help you at that because I've had conversations with them. And they'd be willing to help you with fishing tournaments. And God knows the city would be willing to help you
We're
with
looking forward to
fishing tournaments.
I agree, but I just can't tell the membership what to be interested in. That's.
I know that.
So, well, you're asking me to do that. I'll expose the ability to do that and open up other activities in the club, but I can't tell the members what to be interested in, and that's what you're suggesting. Charge them more money and then tell them what to be interested in. That, to me, isn't a benefit of being a member. I mean, they get to go out there, there's a bunch of different activities, there's a bunch of different members that are interested in different activities. That's kind of what makes the world go round.
Sure, and
Further questions, Councilor?
Yes, I do, and I'd like to go back to if the members think this is a worthwhile club, and to get you through some tough times, even though you got $68,000 in the bank, and your membership, you say, only covers 25% of your expenses.
Yep.
That would be kind of a good reason to up the dues a little bit, so you could cover maybe 50% of your expenses.
I don't think that's the fix, Counselor.
Well, then we're going to disagree.
And I don't think that exposing
trap machines work.
But I don't think that, exposing our bank account to the general public, that's something I'm not sure I'm comfortable with. Secondly, a club that's been in business for, a corporation that's been in business for 60 years, to have what you say is in the account is a little shameful, don't you think? And we want to build and grow on that so that we have the ability to of better programs and better archery programs and other people, and attract people from other areas to come in and spend money in our community and stop in at our stores and buy stuff, and stop in at our gas stations and buy gas, and so on and so forth. So we, this is. Like
Yeah, I'm gonna go on to the next question, because we're talking about the same thing over and over. Any further questions on a different tack? I think you've got your answer on your last question.
Maybe, but not, I'll let someone else speak. Thanks.
Further questions? Further questions? Counselor?
Your club is a non-for-profit organization, correct?
That's right.
So you're not supposed to be making a profit. You're supposed to be breaking even.
Right, maybe profit's not the right word, but we have to make money to put into the other programs. We have to make some money to build on the other programs. We can't just stay stagnant.
One trap machine is $12,000. That's just a trap machine. That's like nothing.
Counselor? Further questions? Further questions, Counselor, to the two speakers? Great. Steve and Tom, thank you. Appreciate you standing up here.
Very much.
Great,
you.
thanks. Our next delegation is Janice Samet. Just a reminder, aside from questions, you do have 10 minutes to do your presentation. Is Janice here? Yeah. That's still on.
No, I'm fine. Good evening, Mayor Steele, councilors, employees of Port Colborne, and all of our constituents in Port Colborne. I want you to know that I have lived at 3677 Second Concession, which is the west lot that abuts against the Port Colborne Conservation Club. Other than a blip in the mid-1990s, there's never been a problem with the happenings of the Port Colborne District Conservation Club. However, since the beginning of this year, the members of the Port Colborne District Conservation Club have demonstrated a total lack of respect for the neighbors. To reiterate, this club has been at this second concession since the mid-1950s. They've always shot every other week from 12 until 3, until this year. All of a sudden, the shooting was increased to every Sunday from 12 until 5. Did they increase the time to accommodate more shooters? I know they've shot there since the 50s, but I've lived in this place for 46 years. And again, there's never been a problem until this year. They increased the shooting time from 12 until 5, and they started shooting on a weekly basis, including Easter Sunday, which we all know is the holiest of all Christian holidays. The increase of hours to accommodate increased shooting. Again, we're shooting. It's not a shooting club. I want you all to know that I am unable to have people come to visit me on Sunday. I can't have my family down because of the number of shots that are being shot. The noise, we can't sit in my family room and have a conversation because of the noise from the shooting. I think the shooters, I would like to, now you want to propose to do it 4 times a month instead of twice a month. 5 hours every day, 6 hours every day. What kind of a life does that give us who live in the area? I want to ask a question. Should the shooting be stated, who's going to monitor the shooting? Who's going to monitor the times? For years, this club ran on shooting for 3 hours every other week. Now they want to go 5, 6 hours every week. Will there be a cap on the number of shooters? I think we've gone from maybe 12 shooters to at least, I'm going to hazard a guess to say 30 or 40. Every time there's a shoot, it's like a war zone in my backyard. A total war zone. And
please, thank you. Have some respect. Thank you.
maybe you should come and sit in my living room or my family room just to understand what I'm saying. The sounds of this war that is happening for the number of hours not only devalues my property, but it also causes me stress for my mental health. And I thank you for listening, and I'm hopefully people will respect my concerns as much as they want us to respect their concerns.
Thank you, Mrs. Sam. I'm going to take questions from council. Anyone have a question to this speaker? Councilor Baggett.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through you, Mrs. Samet. 1990s, you mentioned a problem. Was it because of the shot fall that fell
I
off
think that's
your
what it
property?
was. And I know Mr. Badaway took care of that matter and at that time.
Oh, okay.
And since then,
yeah.
there's never been a problem up until this year. It was 12 to 3 every other Sunday. I can live with that. I can't even have people over for a dinner because of the shooting that's involved and the noise.
Counselor?
Thank you.
Great. Further questions? Thank you, Mrs. Samet.
Thank you.
Our next delegation is Vanessa Samet.
Mayor Steels, council members, the gallery, I thank you for the opportunity just to say a bit of my piece. As a club member, as a neighbor, I see both sides. The only real situation for my mom is the length of time the continual shoots, especially for the meat shoots. Because we're all aware there's 15 to 20 people shooting almost at once for the day. But today, I even have a bigger concern. I just want to lay out to you, Mayor Steels, to the councillors, that in the future, when the shooting is reinstated, and hopefully it's reinstated like it has been in the past, if the skeet field is shut down, I'm hoping that there's not a second trap house replacing the skeet field, which would then bring the numbers of the shooters during the meat shoot from 20 to about 40. So bringing up the number of shots fired in the day from approximately 4,500 to close to 10,000. So Mr. Mayor, I just hope in the future, if there is an idea to create a second trap house where the skeet field is, or even to move the present trap house to accommodate more shooters, I would just hope that Mayor Steels and the council, I hope you just take into great consideration the amount of extra shots fired. Thank you.
Thank you. Questions to the speaker? Seeing none? Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Our next delegation is Andy WeeStreem. Yep, you're set to go.
Mr. Mayor and council members, my name is Andy Veenstra. I live just down the road from where we call it the gun club, conservation property is. I'm just a quarter of a mile east of there. And let me tell you that I enjoy a nap Sunday afternoons. And when I hear this shooting, it just gives me the reassurance that we still have the freedom to own firearms, to shoot, to hunt, and these are both legitimate and legal activities, and I think that that should be maintained. As far as them being a neighbor to us goes, we have property on 3 sides of their property that we farm, and I have never, ever had any problems with trespassing or garbage thrown around or pop cans, anything. They have definitely been good neighbors, and I hope that stays that way. Now, besides the property that we have around their lot, we have a field directly across the road from there where we have 25 to 30 head of beef cattle, and if anyone here knows what cattle are like, when there's anything that's loud or dangerous, they just go wild. We have never had a problem with them shooting, with them going wild over the shooting. And that's a good indication, I think, that what is going on is not a big deal. And I think the positive elements that this group does to our society definitely deserves the support of this council. That's about what I'd like to say. Is I can relate it a little bit to, I mentioned our cattle. We enjoy hamburgers and hot dogs and a steak once in a while, and but there's, you know, everyone here does the same thing, but there's a negative element to that. A few of us have to put up with the smell of manure. Now, I don't like it, and they don't like it, but that's one of the elements of enjoying the positives. And I think the same thing could be applied to this shooting. There's hundreds of people here that enjoy this sport, and there's only one or two that are inconvenienced, and I feel sorry for them, but it's the way it goes. There's a certain negative to all the positives, and I think we have to put up with that.
Great, thank you, Mr. WeeStreem. Questions for the speaker? Great, thank you again. I'm just going to ask again, please. There are rules and regulations in here. I just ask you to follow them, please. Thank you. Our next is a virtual delegation from Lori Tokola, and she's online. Lori, welcome.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Mayor Steele and City Councilors, thank you for this opportunity to present some further thoughts to you this evening about the untenable situation that has occurred at the Port Colborne and District Conservation Club and the resulting negative direct community impact. I want to start first with a little history. The property that we reside at has been in the possession of our family since 1950. That is 73 years of owning property here. We own approximately 20 acres of peaceful, tranquil countryside. And in a country manner of speaking, we live around the corner on Clark Road from the Conservation Club. My father was Howard Page. He was the previous owner of our property and a devout and very proud member of this club for decades. Back when the club's main focus was conservation, basically programs that actively engaged the community. Trap and skeet was a relatively small sideline activity for the club, and so it was on 2 Sundays a month. We just knew Dad was going to the club to do his trap and skeet shooting from 12 noon until 3 p.m. And he would shoot with a handful of other members. Honestly, it was not a problem. It was our way of life, and it was okay. The gunfire was not excessive, as the number of shooters was relatively small. The 3 hours of shooting was tenable and respectful. This led to decades of a harmonious relationship between the club and their local community resident neighbors, not just the landowners abutting up to the club property. I know that my father would be rolling over in his grave right now while observing the lack of respect shown to the community and the overall decline in so many aspects of the club. Over approximately the last year, I can't say exactly when, but it's been quite some time, the gunfire has escalated to the point of making it unbearable to sit outside on a Sunday afternoon. I have had to relocate my outdoor events in my backyard because of the constant barrage of gunfire. With so many guns going off at one time, it really sounds like a machine gun is going off. So no, it's not like it used to be where there'd be several bangs and then a silence. And no, it's not like that anymore. It's like a barrage of constant gunfire. That's the best way I can describe it. It has started on many occasions, as you've heard earlier, well before noon and often lasting until after 6 p.m. This incessant gunfire has been happening on the regularly scheduled shoot days as well as the non-shoot days every Sunday. All of this is not only disrespectful to the neighbors, but entirely unacceptable. This is not what we are paying taxes for. Thank you to those at City Hall who have created the proposed amended bylaw and tiered penalty system. I am requesting that further consideration be given to changing the hours of club operation back to the original 12 noon to 3 p.m. timelines, as was the case for decades. It was only relatively recently the club themselves changed it to extend to 12 noon to 5 p.m. on their website. Yeah. Having a 12 noon to 3 p.m. timeline allows everyone to still have a semblance of family time on a Sunday. And the club has operated for decades on a 12 to 3 timeline and done just fine financially on that. So why not? Also, in regards to enforcement, I also want to touch on that, of the proposed amended bylaw and the tiered penalty system. Who will enforce it? What is the protocol for citizens to follow with concerns of infractions? I am personally asking City Council, Mr. Mayor, if you could please, just 1 second, give a little more time and consideration to this part of the bylaw and have that protocol written right into the bylaw so everybody is on the same page. Also, Chief Firearms Officer Brian Griffith has informed me that it is up to the city to regulate all things about noise in relation to the club's gunfire. So my question is, can the city implement a requirement to have the written notarized consent of all residents within a 2-mile radius of the club giving permission for limited gunfire prescribed as prescribed within the proposed bylaw? Why? Because the fact is that shotgun blasts can be heard up to 2 miles away. And that I've cited Decibel Pro as stating. So I'll ask it again. Can we please have the notarized consent for all residents within 2 miles inserted into the amended bylaw as well? My last question is, with the increased gunfire, if it should happen again, who bears the responsibility for the property devaluations? And lastly, while I am happy to participate in giving this delegation, I am sad too that I have had to do this, because things were very harmonious until the club membership changed. We, the neighbors, have acted in good faith for decades, and we, the neighbors, were not the ones that broke the rules. And after having said all of this, there is a very real fear of personal and property retaliation. I truly hope that doesn't happen. Thank you very much for allowing me to speak.
Thank you, Lori. Questions? Councillor Bodnar.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to Chief Lawson, I guess. Lori has asked what happens if this bylaw goes through and the club just doesn't care and shoots past the allotted time. What have we got in place, or how do neighbors complain or let us know? Thank you.
Chief?
Through the mayor to council, I did have the opportunity to talk to the staff sergeant of our district. He agrees that that would be a call to NRP. NRP would come out to the property. That gives us that report, that we could go off to, if need be, administer an AMPS fine.
Thank you. Counselor? Okay. Questions here? Questions? Counselor Bagu?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just a follow-up to Councilor Bogner's question to the chief. Does the individual get fined or does a club get fined?
Chief?
Through the mayor to council, we'll be fining the club.
Thank you.
Great, thank you. Further questions to this speaker? Counselor?
It's not to the speaker, it's to Chief Lawson.
With regards to what the speaker said?
Yes.
Yep, that's fine.
In continuation of calling the NRP, the residents would have to call the NRP to initiate a complaint. But is there time frames of when the NRP will respond, or any guidelines that do the residents need to take video or make recordings? What is the protocol?
Chief?
Through the mayor to council, I mean, any information is going to help us ensure that all the rules have been followed. I'm still going to follow the Niagara Regional Police should be your first call. But with that said, we have enforced other bylaws within the city, not this one, with the testimony and audio, video information that's been provided to us to start enforcement activities.
Counselor? You're fine? Thank you. Further questions? Thank you, Laurie. Also, we have a number of written delegation material from members of the public. Copies of the written comments pertaining to Community Safety and Enforcement Department Report 2023-175 have been provided to City Council and will be made available to the public at the City Council meeting. They are over here on the right-hand side in the chambers, and they'll also be available within the City Clerk's office for anyone to come in and look at. They will be included in the official record of this meeting. So, with regards to the motion that's on the floor, I do have Councilors Bodner, Aquilina who moved that, and we also have Councilors Bruno and Bagu that asked to have questions with regards to that recommendation. I'll start on my left with Councilor Bodner. Questions through to staff or comments? I'll take comments at this time now.
So I think that I'll make a comment that council never was intended or went looking to get involved in this. This was not something that that we really initiated. It's actually all on the club and the members that decided to go and color outside the lines and kind of blow this whole thing up. But saying that, we certainly have a responsibility to ensure that there is some control, I believe, by this council to see how this club is actually going to act in the future. I liked what I heard up there mostly, but I can tell you that the old club was well respected and was, when they said they were going to do something, they were going to do something. I think this club's got a little ways to go yet to get to that. And I'll end that comment at that. Thanks.
Okay. Councilor Aquilina, any further comments or questions?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I will just reiterate everything that Councilor Bodner said in support of what he said.
Okay, thank you. Councilor Bagu?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I got a question first and then a comment, it's okay with you, Mr. Mayor?
Yep, that's fine.
I guess it goes to the CAO. After tonight's vote, will the city inform the CFO that the inspection can go ahead?
CAO?
So through your worship to Councillor Bagu, depends on what, obviously, what the outcome of the vote is. If the bylaw is approved as presented or with amendments, and we do have some closure or clarity on the issue, the clerk's department will notify the CFO in writing of the decision that council's made. There has been communication pretty much constantly since June between the clerk's office and the CFO, Chief Firearms Officer for Ontario, and they're anxiously awaiting some kind of a final answer from the city. The short answer is yes.
Councillor?
Okay, good, thank you. Just a comment, I was a member of the club for over 20 years, past president, financial secretary, all that stuff. You guys had a lot more money than we used to have. We used to do all the projects. And I am partial to the club, very partial, even though I'm not a member anymore, but we did have a gentleman's agreement, I guess you still call it a gentleman's agreement with the neighbors back then. I was a member in the 80s and 90s, and Trappist went very, very well. Wasn't a big money maker for the club, but it did bring in some monies. And if our few old guys there had a great time. And my last comment, Mr. Mayor, I'm not totally convinced that this council has the legal authority to impose these restrictions at recommendations. So on private property owned by the Port Colborne District Conservation Club. So with that, Mr. Mayor, I cannot support this recommendation. Thank you.
Okay, Councillor Bruno.
Thank you, Worship. Just on a comment, maybe I should have interjected when the chief spoke about the remedies. Is there an opportunity for me to direct a question to the chairman, the two gentlemen that spoke? So?
Yeah, I can bring the president back up if you want.
Sure, if you wouldn't mind.
Stephen, if you want to come back up.
Yep.
Yes, sir.
Thank you for coming back up. What came out of the question to the chief was remedies for what might be an infraction. So what I haven't heard from you folks, but you haven't been asked either, is if your members operate outside of hours or other disturbances, what internal processes do you have to rectify any behavior contrary to either a bylaw now in the future or decorum at the club?
I'm glad you asked that, for the simple fact that I never got a chance to state that we are in the middle of changing our bylaws. We're looking at other people's bylaws to make them similar. I really want to go on a 3-tier system for reprimand. If anybody breaks any rules or goes against any other member's wishes or the board's wishes, that we have a 3-tier system and they're out. I'm in the position right now, building and growth, but I have a pretty low tolerance for disrespect. I have a pretty, we've got some people out, yeah, we put some people on a pretty short leash. They know it. They've been told flat out. I really don't want to see the club be looked at as disrespectful or anything, or any of the members out there sticking their chest out in any which way, shape, or form. Any communication, I've told everybody that I've spoke to, and Tom also, if you're going out and you're mentioning the club's name, you're not representing us. You will talk to us, and we will represent the club. And there will be severe repercussions for any of that. Anything outside of that.
Councillor?
So that will be at some point codified and available, and
Absolutely.
100%.
it won't be your 3 strikes, but it only lasts for 2 months.
Depending
that
on,
kind of
no,
stuff.
it depends on the severity. so-
Sure.
And honestly,
Sure,
we are
obviously.
looking at other people's bylaws. I have honestly, and I'm not asking for any forgiveness for it. I've digested a lot of new names, a lot of new information. Tires sitting in my basement office for hours and hours and hours reading stuff, trying to get myself up to speed. I haven't gotten to the bylaws yet. I have browsed through them. I think they're dated. I think they need to be brought up to speed. So I have had some friends that are here today. As a matter of fact, we want to look at their club's bylaws because they're fairly current. So we're going to compare them to ours and then bring that up to speed. It's truly a time issue that I haven't had a chance to address that.
Kind of busy.
And I apologize.
Counselor?
No, I think that's understandable. I guess why I've liked a lot of the things you talked about, and I think they could be workable. It's a shame that under the old rules of ours, that couldn't have been developed, codified, and then expanded out. But we are where we are,
Right.
and we can't go backwards.
And honestly, I just think that, filling up a lawnmower today and filling up a lawnmower 50 years ago is a lot different. So there are costs and changes in costs to maintaining and growth of the center. I think that we'll find a balance, or we're going to work hard to find a balance with the people around us. We have a lot of support. We have a couple of hurdles. I want to work together with everybody to get through these. I'm not saying we have the right to do this, that, and the other thing. We do have some rights. I mean, we are within our laws. But I don't want to take that approach. I don't want to be that guy with, let's go at it and who cares? Because I actually care. So that being said, let's move forward. Let's start the bill.
So let me ask this final question. So what is the downside of a reset? You've got some funds in the bank. You're doing cleanup. You're reconstituting your bylaws and enforcement. To where there is this bylaw, there are these hours, and as Councillor Budner alluded to, that recess doesn't have to take 10 years or 5 years or 4 years to perhaps come back and move based on that progress. I know it may not sound ideal, but we do have, I think, a responsibility not only to the neighborhood, not only to what may or may not have. I mean, it's always difficult for us on what did happen, what didn't happen. Some are anecdotal stories, some, I mean, it's a leap of faith. But it seems to me there's an opportunity here, but I think there has to just be a kind of time out, reset, get those things in place. Do all the things you're doing, and then see if there's an opportunity to grow it back out.
I agree. I think that, Mr. Bruno, they have you on council to ask the tough questions tonight. So I appreciate that. I think we've had the reset. I think we've hemorrhaged enough monies right now that we want to hemorrhage. We want to start to, make deposits at the bank and not withdrawals anymore. I want to say that, as tonight's bylaw vote, I mean, it's just not going to fly for you or me, but let's see where we're going. We want a chance to prove, and we want a chance to be an active, good neighbor and a community member. So I want to springboard off of that, but let's get back up to what's making the conservation area some income. You've got to have that, just to get going.
Just to comment on the money, you seem to wonder about the money that we have in the bank. We've got $20,000 worth of eaves trough and soffits that need to be put in the building. I mean, we could spend that $60,000 in about 2 days just to bring the place up to speed, right? So we're trying to take the necessities first, so that's why we're moving a little bit slow. Of course, all this stuff also. So, you know, we will get there, as Steve says, but we're trying to pick and choose our battles of what we're gonna repair, what we're not gonna, what we can wait, stuff like that.
Okay, Counselor?
Maybe this is to Madam Clerk.
Sorry. I can let the
Oh,
gentleman
sorry,
sit down.
beg your pardon, thank you, gentlemen.
Steve, Tom, thanks.
We're all done?
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
Through you to Madam Clerk, under our bylaws and procedures, when bylaws are passed, can you outline, is there an appeal period? Can a bylaw be passed and somebody can bring it back up? Is there a time frame when bylaws then can change?
Madam Clerk?
Sorry, be changed, I should have said.
Through you, Mayor Steele, to Councillor Bruno. I believe the CAO can correct me if I'm wrong, but once a motion is passed or a bylaw is passed, there's no amendments that can be made until a motion has been brought forward to make that change to that amendment, or to that bylaw rather.
So someone could bring a bylaw forward in 6 months, 8 months, wanting a change or amendment. Member of the public or through a council member?
It can be either or, so it can be done through a delegation, so somebody can come to council to say they're looking to make that change to, or amend the bylaw, or repeal the bylaw, essentially.
Great, thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Good, thank you. Councillor Danch?
Thank you. Through you, Mayor Steele, and I'm going to ask the presenters there, are you guys able to live with this 12 to 3 and get back in neighbors' good graces? Is that something that's appealing and will help the club? Because, I mean, I'm a member in Dunville. We can shoot 7 days a week, sun up to sundown. So while we're up here doing and listening, I'm Googling a 308, 155 decibels. That's what a guy was shooting next to me a few weeks back. A 410's 150. So I shoot a 9mm. It's fairly loud. But I just wondered if you guys can make this club work, going with the rules and shooting from 12 to 3 on those days of the week. And
Steve? Yep, come on up front. Yep, thanks.
The answer is no. I don't believe we can. I think that we need the extra few hours, whether it starts at 11, ends at 4, however we want to put it together. Families need family time on Sundays. We're offering Saturdays. We're only asking for 10 more hours a week than we were or 10 more hours a month than we were shooting. So, no, I don't think that we can make it work and get the other programs going and support the other programs without the additional hours of skeet and trap. And we've already had half of that shut down. So we're gonna have to make an adjustment to one of those fields and get that recertified after we get our trap field recertified. So we got a long road ahead of us, and with potentially half the income. There's only, and you know, you're a shooter, there's only 5 people on those stations at one time, and only one of those people are shooting at one time. So there's 5 shots, and then everybody changes stations. And then there's 5 shots, and everybody changes stations. So that one round of trap takes 15 minutes. So then there's always a pause between where they call out the next team. So what is that half hour to get effectively get one round of trap through? So if we have some members come from the outside, we're only making $10 a box off of the skeet or clays. How do we effectively make money to fund other projects when we can only get one round of trap through every 15 minutes or 20 minutes in 3 hours? How do we make any money to support other programs?
Counselor?
I know what you're saying. I've shot in Fort Erie, and I'm no good at it, but like you said, you know, you line up to shoot, you don't even load until you're allowed. You make a shot, you stop. The next guy makes a shot, you stop. It's not a repetitive shooting thing, so you're not blasting them continuously, and you can't do that with the handguns in Dunville. You're restricted to how many shells you can put in your gun. But it's not like it's an army out there shooting weapons all day long, because there is a time in between, and then you change those guys that are shooting, so there is a period of nothing, correct?
Correct.
Thank you.
So, and
Yeah,
not to
that's
mention.
good, you answered
sorry.
his question, thanks.
Okay.
No, I'm gonna go to, you're good, I'm gonna go to the next speaker. If you want them to come back up. Do you have I'll wait till I go to Councilor Elliott. Can I let the speaker sit down?
Yeah.
Okay, thanks, Steve.
I'll come back up
If they ask, correct, yes, thank you.
Just
Councilor Elliott.
Thank you, Mayor. Through you to staff, you the CAO, or the chief. We are able to legally regulate times, and to put the bylaw in on the amps fine, we have the legal right to do that.
You want to start?
Because
Okay.
I'm kind of questioning it, because Councillor said he wasn't sure if we had the legal right to do it.
CAO.
Sure, through your worship to Councillor Elliott, we have been working with our legal advisors from the law firm throughout this whole process. At every juncture, we've been advised that we cannot override the province's approval of the permission, but we can regulate how, where, when, through discharge of firearms. So, for example, our discharge of firearms bylaw sets out how far from a road, how far from a building, how far from an agricultural operation, and so on. And our legal advice is that we do have the authority to regulate time of day and number of days per month. But we couldn't say there's no shooting permitted, because the province has already said that there is shooting permitted if and when they issue the certificate. And we can't go higher than the province. The province is higher than us in the grand scheme of things. So that's our legal advice. I don't have it in a legal opinion that says, yes, Port Colborne, you have the authority to regulate the act, but the lawyer's been at every meeting that we've had, and I'm not sure if the fire chief wants to chip in on that.
Chief Lawson?
Through the mayor to council, I'll echo the CAO's comments. The CFO, we've had multiple conversations with him, and he says every municipality regulates their shooting clubs. He's there to make sure it's safe.
Councillor?
I just wanted to make sure that was clear. Thank you.
Okay, further questions? Any further questions? Councillor Bodnar?
Thank you. Just to pick up on Councillor Danch's inquiry on the trap shooting and how it goes, I wonder if I could get the president of the club up again, and wonder if he could explain to us how I'll use the term because you guys use it, the meet shoot goes. How is that presented? It's different from the trap, I believe.
Stephen? Go ahead.
The meat shoot is different from regular trap shoot, where you get a row of shooters, however many enter into that competition. 3 shooters will raise their guns. 1 clay will be sent out into the air. The first gentleman shoots at it, or woman shoots at it. If they miss, the second person takes a shot at it. And if they miss, the third person has the option to take a shot at the clay. First person misses, the second person hits the clay, the first person is eliminated from the competition. If the first and second people shoot and they miss, the third person takes the alternate shot. He hits the clay, number 1 and 2 are eliminated from the competition. So it's a process of elimination, and in that we call it a meat shoot because you're last man standing wins a package of sausage, a pound of bacon, and stuff. It's a pretty simple thing. But at no given time are there more than one shooter shooting at a time at one clay until he misses and the next one shoots, and then if he wants to, the third one can shoot.
Counselor?
So would you say that generates, oh, sorry. So would you say that generates 10 times the shots of a regular trap shooting? Like you
Steve?
must go down the line and start the next ones
No.
right away, right? You said there was a
Do
number
I
of people
think
in
it
line.
generates more shots than the average day? No, because nobody's shooting trap or skeet, so they're only shooting the one competition. The same with a buddy shoot, where two people get together as a team. They're on the 5 different stations. That's the other competition shoot we do. The 2 people are together. The first person shoots at that clay on station 1. If he misses, the second person shoots. But they only shoot combined 20 shots in that competition. A single shooter going up and doing a round of trap is shooting 25.
Counselor?
So it's less shots.
Okay, that's good. Yep.
Are you okay? You
Thanks.
done?
Yep.
Thank
So, can I make a
Thanks.
comment?
Yeah, comments or questions at this time?
Okay.
Yeah.
So just to pick up on Councillor Bruno's question as to if we were to pass this bylaw tonight, I would think that then, after a certain amount of time, club or a councillor or something could bring up and ask that it be altered. And I just think that's something that everybody should keep in mind, that it isn't a one and done. It could be fine-tuned at another time. So that's all I got.
Okay, thank you, Counselor. Any further questions or comments? That's it? Okay. So we do have a recommendation on the floor, duly moved and seconded. I will now call for a vote. All those in favor, please raise your hand. All those opposed? Motion is carried. Oops, sorry. We are on to item 9.2. For those with the Conservation Club, we'll allow them time to leave. Yeah, normally what you do, I mean, delegation could come and ask, but it's got to be led by a counselor. Like, counselor ultimately has to bring it for chief to bring another report forward for changes. Yeah, no, that's fine, so. But. Yeah, and they understand they got some issues with Okay, so we, next item is 9.2. Is a recommendation report for proposed official plan and zoning bylaw amendment 135 Coronation Drive. The recommendation that Development and Legislative Services Department Planning Division Report 2023-154 be received. And that official plan amendment attached as Appendix A of Planning Division Report 2023-154 be approved, and that the zoning bylaw amendment attached as Appendix B of Planning Division Report 2023-154 be approved with a recommended holding provision. I have Councilors Bruno and Bagu moving that, or sorry, I apologize. I have Councilors Bruno and Aquilina moving that. I'm going to go to Councilor Bruno. Or sorry, before I go to questions, I'm going to do my delegations. Yes. Thanks. So my first delegation is Susan Pigeon, who's a resident at 100 Coronation Drive. Susan, come on up.
Mayor and council members, I hope we're all awake enough to, and I'm awake enough to do this. Okay. My name is Susan Pigeon. I live at 100 Coronation Drive, which is directly across the street from the proposed zoning change. I have lived in this house for all but 9 years of my life. I was born and raised there, and moved back with my husband and my 2 young children in 1993. It has always been my home. It has always been the safest neighborhood in Port Colborne because there is never any traffic other than the people of the neighborhood. As to my count, we currently have 45 homes on Coronation Drive, on the whole horseshoe, okay? The property that we are talking about is equivalent to 5 of our lots that they want to put 114 homes on. We have no sidewalks. We have no shoulder on the road at all. We have ditches. So to walk in our neighborhood, you have to walk on the road, or you are on the incline on the grass into the ditch. If you park on the road, the street becomes a 1-lane street. If you park on both sides of the street, there is no possible way any emergency vehicle could ever get down the street. The only access in and out of our neighborhood at all, whether you follow Coronation Drive or cross to Corvette or go around to Merritt Parkway, all enters Highway 58, which we all know is a 5-lane highway, Ontario Highway, that has many issues for safety concerns. I was part of the fight many years ago to get some kind of a crosswalk put in. All of our children walk to school. There are no buses to either the Catholic or the public school. They have to cross the highway. At that time, there was no light or anything, and one crossing guard who, after the 3rd time she was nearly hit, we had to come to council, and because the MTO would not put a light in, we finally got the one little yellow light that still hangs there today, and thankfully the city has put a 2nd crossing guard. But it is, without talking about this development, that is still insufficient. The sidewalk from any of our streets to get to that crosswalk where those children have to cross is inadequate. It is not at all adequate for anybody with a disability. It is not a sidewalk, it is just pavement that goes like this. Any disabled person with on a scooter, or any senior with any motor disabilities cannot walk along that highway to cross the highway. We have no stoplight. The only stoplight is you would have to cross the mall, and there's no sidewalk that goes across past the mall to get to the stoplight at Northland Avenue. Or you go the other way on the inadequate sidewalk to get all the way up to Main Street to cross at McDonald's. Those are the only two safe ways we have to cross the street, to cross the highway. By putting more people in our neighborhood, more children that have to cross to get to these schools, it is just putting more lives at risk. Okay, my children could tell you when they were children, Kelly walked to school with them, how many times they stood at that highway to cross and a car whipped through. It happened multiple times a week. There's more traffic now than there was 20 years ago, and it's just not acceptable. I've talked a little bit about our neighborhood is unique because of that highway. There's no way in or out but to get across that highway. A left turn out of our street to go towards Welland, which 95% of the people in our neighborhood are doing daily because there are no jobs in Port Colborne. Everybody that can afford a house in our neighborhood or will be able to afford any of these townhomes that are proposed have to leave the city to go to work. It is unsafe to turn left there. It's just, you sit there and you sit there and you sit there and you finally get out and somebody comes up right behind you because they want to go into the mall. It's not a good situation. Beyond that, if you look at our neighborhood, another way it is unique, on Coronation Drive, if you just look at North Coronation, where this is going to be right involved in, we have 5 of the residents. I counted 18 residents on North Coronation. 5 of those residents are people like me. They are multi-generation families. Their parents, we have one that it's the 3rd generation that has lived in the home. Okay? The people that live in this neighborhood live there because it is quiet, it is safe. My husband recently had a heart attack and had open heart surgery. During his recovery, it was mandatory for him to get out and walk. Without me taking him in a car and driving to some place that has a sidewalk, we had to walk the streets of our neighborhood. If I was not there to take him and it was not safe for him to walk in the neighborhood, he would not have been able to do his prescribed rehabilitation walking. If we put cars parked on the street and more cars going up and down the street, it makes our neighborhood unsafe. And we deserve, like every other resident of the city deserves, to be able to have a safe place to have a healthy lifestyle. Okay? The seniors in the neighborhood, it's not safe for them to cross that 5-lane highway. They can't walk across fast enough. Our children ride bikes up and down our streets because that's all they have. one interesting thing,
Sue, just to let you know, you got a
Okay.
minute left, okay?
Okay. Yeah, I'm almost done. The developer stated that we have proximity to schools, churches, and parks. Well, we have one little park on Merritt Parkway. Everything else has to be accessed by crossing Highway 58, which is not accessible to anybody who walks or rides a bike or does not have a vehicle. And just one other little anecdote. In the wintertime, Highway 58 gets plowed all the time. Our street does not, and it does not get plowed in a timely manner. We get 2 to 3 lanes of snow piled at the end of our street from the highway, and we don't get paid for 24 hours. My husband has personally taken the snow blower out to the end of the street multiple times in the winter so that he can plow out the snow so that he can get to work. What are these other 114 households going to do?
Thanks, Susan.
Thank you.
Hold it before you go. Questions to the speaker? Great, thanks. Our next delegation is Kelly Rowe, 83 Coronation Drive.
So good evening, Mr. Mayor, council members, and city staff. My name is Kelly Rowe, and I live at 83 Coronation Drive. I'm here today to provide some brief inputs on the concerns with the zoning bylaw amendment proposed for Coronation Drive. Given the amount of development and anticipated traffic and vehicle increases, how is a preliminary traffic study not required? We brought concerns to the city staff's attention on July 11th. 77 days or 10 weeks have gone by, and still no one can answer our questions. Even if policy doesn't require a traffic study at this stage, it was brought up 77 days ago that the residents wanted one to ensure our safety before passing this proposal. Say we wait until the site plan phase and it is deemed that this does not work, what happens then? Will the units be reduced? Will this plan still be viable? Traffic has been a long-standing issue in our neighborhood. This proposal calls for significant change in the use of land. From a traffic perspective, we believe if the plaza were to expand for commercial uses, everyone would expect that traffic would use the existing access points from West Side Road. In this case, we are proposing access off of Coronation Drive, effectively destroying our neighborhood and making our streets ultimately unsafe for our families. Traffic will flow around Coronation Drive due to the inability to turn onto West Side Road. As some of the council members have recently seen during their visit to our neighborhood, the traffic on West Side Road is heavy and at times travels at higher than marked speed limits. There are no barriers and there are no sidewalks for safety. When we asked about sidewalks, we were told it was managed by the MTO. When we spoke to the MTO, we were told it was the city's responsibility. We are confused by the confusion. No one disagrees with development. We disagree with his high-density proposal in an area that is currently low density and low traffic. We believe the negatives outweigh the positives. All we are asking and all we are saying is that if this unfortunately has to go to appeal, is the city staff prepared to defend with no traffic study? It is not about design, it's about volume. You can mitigate design, you can change design, but you can't change volume. Please consider the volume of traffic this will bring to our streets, as the proposal doubles the population density in our neighborhood. As I am sure council is aware, there are a number of other developments proposed with entrances off of West Side Road. The overall impact to traffic volumes will be astronomical. We can only hope that these projects are not being managed in silos. The disappointing part about all of this is that since July, we seem to be no further ahead than when we raised our initial concerns. What have we been doing? The perception is that we are rushing to save a refund of part of the application fees in relation to the 120-day rule. Let's ask ourselves, does that matter more than getting this done right? Going through an appeal process will cost us all a lot more. I know I'm not a planner and I'm not an expert on this topic, but I've consulted some who also share our concerns. Our opinions should matter. Thank you.
Great, thank you. Before you go, questions to the presenter? Okay, thank you, Kelly. Our next delegation is Peter DiPietro. Just state your address, Peter.
It's on 92 Coronation Drive.
Well, that's when you get to the microphone. We'll ask you to do that on the live. Just press the red button.
92 Coronation Drive.
Thanks, Peter.
Yes, sir. I'm just trying to, there was some confusion. I do apologize to everybody here I had a PowerPoint presentation with some photos. There may be a little bit of overlap, but I think the photos are very important to what we are trying to communicate. And so Kelly's helping me out here, and thanks to the Clerk's Department for being patient with me today. So again, I do apologize. There's a little bit of overlap. We'll try to move through this and summarize it because time is of the essence. So I want to start out by thanking. September 22nd was a very important day for me, the community, and the people that showed up. I want to thank Aaron from MPG for being at my house. I want to thank the counselors that arrived. And I do understand the other counselors have to work, and there's part of life that is involved. So the reason why I wanted to have the meeting at 2:30 was, again, the major issue that we're bringing up. And why it's important to me to have a visual, because a lot of you couldn't be there today. These are my kids and my neighbor walking to school every day, right? So this is Coronation Drive. The lot we're talking about is to our left here. And if we can go to the second slide, I'll try to go quick here. Sorry for having technical difficulties, guys. We advance the slide, sorry. She's not going. All right, as we get closer to 58, these are our concerns. To see them is a whole different thing. To hear them, you have to see them. To watch your kids walk down the street with no sidewalks in the middle of winter, as you mentioned, to get to Highway 58, and the term I always use, it's a beast. So next slide, please. We get to the corner, and it has been mentioned about MTO versus municipality and who's responsible for the sidewalk. If we could advance that slide.
I did. It's on your screen, but it's not.
All right, a little hesitation. This is, in my opinion, horrible. My kids have to walk down the street, and there are newborns that are in our community because there is a change going on in our neighborhood. My kids, and me taking these pictures, I'm going to get emotional again, have to walk to school on a major highway. Yes, it's Highway 58. Yes, the traffic is a little high right now when we had the meeting because 140, the roundabout's coming in. So commercial traffic is being diverted. It still does not take away the safety issues on Highway 58, even without the development. If the development goes in for those new residents on Port Colborne, they're going to experience the same thing. If we could go to the next little video, please. We press play. It's only a minute.
Just play on your laptop.
Thank you. So if you all could take the opportunity to go to 58 one day and stand on the corner of Coronation, Merritt, both ends, and just sit there and observe the traffic, especially around 2:30 or in the morning when the kids are going to school. This particular truck, you can't really see it because it is buffering. That's a 50 zone. It goes from a 70 to a 50. In the report, it only mentions about the 70 zone in front of this particular parcel. It does not mention that it comes down to a 50 zone. That truck was braking because it saw my kids, right? They are zooming past here at an alarming rate. This is unacceptable. There should be a buffer, and it was mentioned in our meeting, between any sidewalk and the major highway. MTO's response to me, I've been on the phone with Neve Constantine, wonderful man, says the roadway is only MTO, the municipality is responsible for the sidewalk. That's a fact. What is going to happen if this development goes in? I'm not opposed to this development going in. I believe in development and evolving. But there's nothing in place, nothing has been presented, there's nothing on paper that says we will do this to help this. Can we go to the next slide if possible? Get to the crosswalk. That is MTO property. had a discussion with Mr. Constantine, and all he mentioned was, is that on Omer? I said, yes. Okay. There's no concerns from NTO at this point. Sue had mentioned they had fought for one light. So at this point, we could go to the... I tried to get the crosswalks to be here today, but they're a little shy, so I got them, the employees. So they wrote a little something. So am I allowed to speak on behalf of them?
Normally, no. Unless council wants to give you permission, you can submit that, but you're here.
If I could submit it, it'd be great.
Yeah, yeah, you can submit it, yeah.
Yeah, so.
Because normally you're here for yourself. Like,
Correct.
Yeah.
That's why I wanted to ask permission. Thank you, Mr. Steele. So if we can go to the next. It's a nice little video, but it's buffering. It shows you. I've witnessed this myself. Traffic doesn't pay attention to one little yellow light, especially a little stop sign you can't see when people are going above the speed limit. All right, so we'll try to move on. So the other thing, and it's been mentioned, but a visual always adds to the statement. That is a parked transport truck on Highway 58 going to get a coffee. The issue is getting out of Coronation Drive or Merritt. You try to hang a left-hand turn, that vehicle is parked in a 70-kilometer zone. So if I try to hang a left-hand turn, I have to creep out. These bushes are usually a lot taller, they're not maintained. There's a blind spot. Those trucks are there all the time. At night, sometimes they're backed up 6 vehicles deep, right? They're going to get a coffee. This was in the morning. Kids are walking to school. I took that picture. And when we had our walkabout with the counselors, Aaron himself observed it, and the planners, right? You had a transport truck that parked and caused some issues, right? And again, I'm going to reference 140 being closed. Even if the commercial traffic goes down to half, there's still major safety issues. This development will increase those issues, and the people living there will also be dealing with these issues. Is the next slide? I'm trying to speed up here, so I apologize if I'm a little out of whack. There's the same transport truck that was parked there for his coffee break. If this goes through, which is wonderful, right? What is going to be done to make it safe for all the residents of Port Colborne? Enforcement? Neve Constantine was very concerned about this as well. He had no idea. So moving forward, I had to send some emails, concerns with all the above. And I do understand if this rezoning goes through, then the traffic study may take place by the developer. But it should have been done a long time ago. So what I wanted to touch on, and thank you, if you could go to the next slide. NRP, I know this is from 2022. You have motorists doing 110 in a 50 zone. NRP website, drive safe. Next one, please, Kelly. This was just the other day. You had a motorist, not a buy, you can buy a school bus sign. Signs out, didn't stop, kept driving on Highway 58. Please drive safe and remember to watch for pedestrians. This is the NRP on Highway 58 on our section. Again, it's the safety of our community and everybody that uses Highway 58. All the kids that go to both schools, St. John Bosco, Oakwood, because as Sue's mentioned, we don't get buses because we're too close, right? How are these kids supposed to cross Highway 58? When you have 2 adults, and I can't, wish I could quote them, afraid to go to work.
Peter, you got a minute.
Pardon me? Thank you very much.
Okay.
So what I wanted to do, and I know I talked a little much. Give me one moment, please. Doug Ford made a statement the other day about the Greenbelt making mistakes. And he had several quotes that I wanted to bring up, but 10 minutes is not enough. At the end of his statement about making a little bit of an error, because even if you do something for the right reason, with the best intentions, it can still be wrong. This is exactly how we feel about this proposal. We understand we need housing, we understand that people need some place to live, but how is it going to work? It's not, in my opinion, possible because of the unique area, the streets we live on, the Coronation and Highway 58. Thank you for your time.
Thanks, Peter.
Thank
Before
you
we
very
leave,
much.
Questions? Councillor Baggy.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through you to Peter. Thanks, Peter, for your presentation. Slides helped tremendously for me, at least. You mentioned the sidewalk going towards the crossing guards, that a buffer is needed. What do you mean by a buffer?
A statement was made, and I don't, about it should be more safe between a major highway and a sidewalk. This used to be a 2-lane road, to my understanding. I've been in the area for about 9 years now. But you have a 4-lane highway and a center turning lane, right? And during our walkabout, a statement was made that usually there should be a buffer between a highway and a sidewalk. So I'm not the engineer, I'm not a planner, but something like that should be in place for safety for the pedestrians.
Councillor?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you, Peter.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. Further questions? Seeing none? Thanks, Peter.
Thank you.
Next delegation is Mark Tremblay. And just state your address, Mark, please.
I live at 91 Coronation. Everybody here made a great statement. Everybody's got great points. Everybody's got great views. But this is my backyard. You're going to put a 35-foot wall up. Where's my privacy going to go? This is the reason why people move to Port. People have hectic lives. They deal with bullshit all day. And they want to come home. They just want to watch TV, talk to their wives, walk the dog, and go to bed. Now you're going to build this? You're going to build a 3-story house. Where's my privacy going to go? We have all these units that are going to go look down my backyard. One of the main reason and purpose why I bought this home was because of the space, because of the room. I got 250 by 110. That's a great lot. I'm also concerned that I'm going to have more than 150 people directly in my neighbors. That we have in our, you're going to have 150 people. That's more than what we have in our neighborhood. We're going to be faced with constant noise, constant lights, constant flashes, flashing in my backyard, my house. I got kids that got to go to school. Let's be honest. There's one person here that would want that for themselves. Live in my backyard. And you're going to have this. Coronation Drive is the quiet place, community where everybody can get together. We don't have fences in our backyard. Everybody gets together. We all shoot the shit. It was great. Everybody knows each other. Now you're going to have somebody we don't know in our backyard. Where's my privacy going to go? Am I going to get a fence put up? Where's this water going to go? What if you hit bedrock? The foundation of my house is going to crack. Who's going to replace that? These are stuff that I'm worried about. You know what? Thank you.
Good. Alderman, just in case there's a question, just a sec. Questions from any council? Thank you, Mark. Appreciate it. We do have several written delegations which will be part of the meeting. And there's nobody on. No. Okay. Now to the recommendation. Pardon? Sure. We do have Aaron Butler from NPG, Planning Solutions, as a delegation. Aaron, do you want to add anything? Welcome. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, members of council. I'm Aaron Butler with NPG Planning Solutions. I'm a professional planner, principal planner with NPG. Masavri Modak is online today, my colleague, and we're the planners for Sobeys. Just want to reiterate a few things. We've had the chance to review the staff recommendation report, the corresponding bylaws. We concur with the recommendations contained from your staff in that report. And we also did provide written response to comments that we received at the public meeting and from council and members of the public, and that was attached to the staff report. And with respect to traffic and safety concerns, which was obviously a major point of discussion at the public meeting, and we understand it's a point of concern from the public, we're in agreement with the recommendation by staff to use a holding symbol in the zoning bylaw to require the study. The holding symbol prevents the proposal from going forward until a traffic study has been completed. And it has to be reviewed by city staff and other agencies, the MTO, of course. Essentially, the zoning doesn't take place until applicable agencies have reviewed and accepted the traffic study. It would also be appropriate for a traffic study to review, make recommendations on technical matters, driveway locations, intersection and roadway improvements, pedestrian movement, those types of things. There's a number of things I just want to touch on. You heard our opinion that the land use change at the last meeting. We're in a position to support this official plan and zoning amendment. In our opinion, it does represent a compatible development in terms of use, height, massing, scale, and the layout. The site plan submitted with the application demonstrates a design that internalizes the parking to the site. It's less visible from the public streets. The dwelling units have porches and front doors facing Coronation, as opposed to a series of individual driveways on Coronation, leaving room for appropriate landscaping along the street. We've recommended urban design policies in the official plan amendment. Those relate to orienting units towards the street, screening parking from view, and the provision of landscape buffers along property lines to improve the public realm and to improve and provide buffers from adjacent properties. That's part of our recommendation in the OPA, and that's being recommended to you tonight by your staff. Lastly, just to say that this plan will provide a housing form, stacked townhouses, which is somewhat new to Port Colborne and adds to the housing options available to current and future residents. It provides a more attainable form of housing than more traditional ground-oriented, single and semi-detached dwellings, and it will help diversify the housing base available to people in Port Colborne. We believe the lands are well suited for residential infill development and that it is an appropriate location to fulfill or help fulfill the demand for housing. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Questions to the presenter? Councillor Bruno?
Thank you, Worship. Aaron, more than anybody else, and our staff did an excellent job of coming out, but I want council to know that Aaron made a special trip down here to meet with the residents at that last invite. He took a lot of notes, and I felt that he was very conscientious about perhaps building those back to the owner. When I have my comments after the delegates, I will speak to that issue of owner. Aaron, I wanted to ask you that what the residents have done is to try to speak to the owner with respect to the ability to maybe come to some mitigation, to do those kind of things that I know you heard at that last meeting. Some of those things and which you felt perhaps could be brought back to the ownership group and talked about. I'm wondering if, since we left that meeting, if you've had a chance to talk to ownership.
Through you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you, Councillor Bruno. Yes, I've spoken with our client, representative from Sobeys, about the meeting, and I also thought it went well and was a cordial meeting. They're in agreement also with the traffic study, and that's a concern of the public. We heard that. They're fine with using the holding symbol to require the traffic study, which, as I said, could result in recommendations related to the intersection, roadway improvements, connections through the site, those kinds of things. The owner, was happy to provide connections on private property in terms of a sidewalk. Of course, that's on their property, to at least allow residents traveling through the site through to 58. And we believe in, as I said, our opinion previously, that the development is compatible as presented to you. The setbacks that are proposed, the height of the buildings, and the policies that we've recommended with our clients' input in the official plan amendment about urban design, landscaping, buffering, and orientation of units, those types of things.
Councillor?
As you're probably aware, either independently or at that meeting, the residents wanted to speak with the owner. They made attempts to contact Sobeys development people. They either were directed, or the only way to get to those folks was via a questionnaire, I'm told, on the Sobeys website, to try and get to speak to somebody at Sobeys. And because they wanted them to come down and see if they could work out some of those issues in terms of the height next to a home, in terms of, although it was mentioned about design, you and I had a conversation about Sobeys is not in the housing business and probably wouldn't be the builder, the designer, architect, any of that of the building. But they could certainly institute in their sales process a builder of high standing, some suggestions that we want to leave a legacy here. We are in the backyard of that neighborhood, and I'm really struck by, from what I hear, the lack of comments coming back from Sobeys. I wonder if you have any new information on them being contacted, them asking you, should we go down there and talk to the neighbors? Because this is one of the missing links. We've all applauded developers who've met ahead of time, fleshed out a lot of issues. It's been positive. We keep referring to one development in town that worked. And I'm just wondering if you know anything about that proposed meeting that was requested via the website, call in, and there may be somebody here who could speak who led that charge. But from what I've heard, it's been silence. I don't know if you know any different.
Aaron?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, I'm aware that our client, my contact at Sobeys, was also, I think, reached out to by the neighbors in the same manner that I was reached out to by email. I spoke with her, and we decided that I would attend the meeting on their behalf.
So they declined to meet with the neighbors directly?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, as their agent on the file.
It's fine, thank you.
Okay. Questions? Councillor Aquilina.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through you to either the consultant or to the planning staff, when you talk about the holding provision, can you explain how that impacts this recommendation report, just so I have it clear in my head?
Ms. Lander?
Through the mayor to the councillor, the holding provision is on the property, which essentially holds the zoning of the property. So if you approve the zoning tonight, the hold would require the applicant to do the traffic study, and then the proposal would come back. If the traffic study is done to the satisfaction of the MTO and staff, then you would then remove the holding, and then the zoning would be in effect.
Councillor?
So if I get this correct, the holding provision is just to give the property owners the ability to do a traffic study, but nothing else changes.
Through the mayor to the councillor, it requires them to do the traffic study, and then it puts the decision back in council's hands. Council is the approval authority to remove the holding provision. So once the work is done on the traffic study and it's been reviewed internally as well as externally by MTO, then we would come back to council with a recommendation on whether to remove the hold or not. And then it would be back in council's hands to make the decision.
Okay, thank you.
So just to clarify, Denise, when that comes back, I mean, we're taking a step today that would be the final step with that recommendation coming back here. It would still give council a chance to make changes on your entire package coming back, or only on the traffic portion?
To the mayor, it's to deal with traffic. If there was concerns with regards to the study or questions with regards to the content of the traffic study, that could be discussed. But aside from that, it's not to open up the rest of the development.
Okay. I want to clarify that for the council. Thanks. Any further questions to the applicant's agent? Thank you, Aaron. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
So we have a recommendation on the floor, duly seconded. We'll take questions and comments. I'll start with the list that's already been given me. I have Councilor first.
Thank you, Worship. Again, I wanted to thank our planning staff, Aaron in particular, certainly all the neighbors. I've been involved for years with neighborhood groups, and I think everybody would say this is a pretty well organized, very respectful group. And I think you've seen the passion, you've seen the concerns. I'm going to deal with not repeating some of the stuff that's already in there. So today what we're having is a similar situation to, in this regard, to what's happened at Elm Street. Councilor Elliott and Councilor Baggett, you all recall, asked questions about that development and the impact of intensification. Today it appears that owners who are not necessarily the developer are in their best interest trying to look to maximize return. There's actually nothing wrong with that. Believe in free enterprise, and that's fine. At the end of the day, though, it seems that what we're seeing now is the developer asks for the max. The residents aren't against development in their area, as you've heard tonight, but they may want to move from. These folks aren't asking for 7 houses across from 7 houses, but they are asking for some consideration that ultimately impacts the traffic. Traffic study is great, and it's great that they put an H. Holding, that's a very important thing to have achieved. But at the end of the day, there is no give and take in this case with the owner, because they can't see the owner. They can't talk to the owner. So in this case, it's fortunate that it is them in many respects. They're a large company with a store in their backyard. They've held that property for all these years. And my hope, and I know the hopes of the residents, is that they would contact the residents. You know, they're leaving a legacy on that land. They're going to be selling it to somebody to build. They could do things such as put design constraints on as a part of their listing. They could look at presenting a plan to developers and see who would buy. They could sit down and talk to the residents. They could, if they're not interested in the whole scheme of just all profit, mitigate the number of units there. And the neighborhood and the city would be better for it, because the development would be built in a cooperative fashion. And if you're tweaking that and that project is your legacy, what better way than to have the neighbors on side? Unfortunately, the neighbors have done all the right things. Talked to the planning department, they brought us all out. They gathered together in backyards for 2 meetings. And what unfortunately they got out of it was no response from the owner, not the developer. That's not a great way forward for Port Colborne, and it's not a great way forward for this project. And here's the dilemma: time. In this case, it's, and this is going to happen in the next one. You can't just ask for the max and stand your ground because the residents might give up. You might win at LPAT. You can put in for the max, and if nobody complains, you get it. It's time to have owners, and we can do this in a very, I guess I'll say, symbolic way on this one. But if you want to move forward in Port Colborne, we're on your side. But that doesn't mean you stay away from the local people. Yes, there's the public meeting under the Planning Act. Yes, they're sending your agent. I'd rather just send a message to them that you need to come and talk to people, because as was said about some other developments, when this is built, they're gone. And the residents are going to put up with whether it's street parking, whether it's orientation. And yes, we can hear all we want about all these things can be changed at site plan. But I think this development will happen if there is a no vote on this. Because I think a responsible public company like Sobeys will come back to the table, or they will just let it go to MPAC and say, let them decide. I'm hoping they'll come to the table, but right now, at the 11th hour, the only way to get their attention and ask them to come to the table is with a no vote, which is very unfortunate. But I do think that a no vote is going to bring them to the table. Or, at the end of the day, it will go to LPAC. In Niagara Falls, they had a similar situation. The council voted unanimously to push back an existing neighborhood from, in that case, it wasn't, I believe it was a high-rise. So there are differences. But at the end of the day, it's unfortunate that that is something that has to bring people to the table. I would just close by saying, this is not going to turn away a development there. Sobeys is going to sell the land. They've been mandated to sell the land. They will sell the land, and somebody will build there. So this isn't going to be about, if you don't approve this, development won't happen there. I also don't believe it's about Port Colborne not being open for business, because we've got other developments that we passed. I get it, we all want responsible development, but you can only have responsibility when there's two sides talking. And it's great that they got Aaron, it's great that they brought things to the table, but I would ask that on principle you turn this down, because it doesn't fit as it is now for this neighborhood. It could fit, and it doesn't have to be 114 units to 7, it doesn't have to be 114 to 50, but I think there needs to be consideration. I'd be very interested to see if they would come to the table and we come back here with a development that pleases both sides. But at this late hour, the only way to send that message, unfortunately, as I'm pro-development, is to say no. And so I would urge you today to say no, and it might bring forward a better future when that development's either in your ward or in your neighborhood. Because Port Colborne's going to be faced with a lot of infill. We're on rock, we're doing some studies, we have infill land that can be developed. If we don't set out our case to stand up for a better built Port Colborne for all of us that are still there, then I think this just is a bulldozer going through everything. And I don't know how you say respectfully no to the next guy. If you start the process, it was happened at the Humberston Builders site with that kind of dialogue. It can happen here, and it can happen elsewhere. So I would just hope that you could, in this case, turn down the proposal at this time and see if this can move forward on a better basis and better development. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Aquilina.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I had the opportunity to come to visit the coronation site, and I appreciate the invitation to that. I really can't eloquently say everything that you just said, Councillor Bruno, so I'm not going to try, but I'm in agreement with what you said. I'm not opposed to development, but I don't think that this is a good fit for the site that's there, and for those reasons, I will be voting no.
Thank you, Councillor. Further questions or comments? Seeing none? Okay, we have a recommendation duly moved and seconded. All those in favor? All those opposed? The recommendation is defeated.
Thank you. Thank you.
Okay. We'll allow these people to leave, and then we've got 8.1, which is Mr. Holt. We don't want to hear it. No, we don't want to hear it. We don't want to listen to it.
Gonna go with the promise.
Could be worse than doing this to the Gary.
I imagine it's not coming back. Problems on the side.
Your name and
fee.
I love you all.
Oh, I just got one thing.
Pretty good stuff, thanks.
Well, yeah, we got a date.
Heck of a goaltender.
We just raised like taxes in Montreal.
What do you know? I sit there while
Thank you, everybody.
Pretty interesting.
That's why they have the region.
Not here.
Okay, Mr. Bowles, you ready? We have item 8.1, the capital, 2024 capital related project budget. Recommendation moved by Councilor Bruno, seconded by Councilor Elliott, that the Corporate Services Department Financial Services Division report number 2023-160, subject 2024 capital related projects budget be received. That the 2024 capital related budget projects budget as outlined in report number 2023-160 be approved, and the projects identified in the 2024 capital related projects budget be permitted to begin immediately where feasible. Councilor Bruno.
Thank you, Worship. I was pleased, and I am open-minded about these things, that Mr. Bowles sent out a memorandum, because if you recall at the meeting, the concern I had that we were pre-approving something and we didn't know the end game. The fact that the end game says that we're going to be under 3% with the operational budget in. The fact that it doesn't take in yet with growth and those numbers, you can only go from 2.99 down. It seems to me a responsible budget. It seems responsible and probably unique that the capital budget, what we're investing in the city, is actually going to be more than the raise in the operational budget. That doesn't happen. So on that basis, I'm now happy to approve that. I love the fact that placeholders were asked for explanation, and placeholders were granted and in the memorandum. So I'm happy to let them, the staff, start on the 2.25, I believe it was, capital budget, which is only a quarter of a point from what the target was in the last time at 2%. And it seems to me that knowing what the cap is right now in a 5% world, I'm very pleased. So I'm okay with now passing the capital budget.
Thank you, Councilor. Any further comments or questions? All in favor, please raise your hand. That's carried. There are no motions this evening. Are there any notices of motion? Minutes of boards and committees. We have the minutes of the Port Colborne Public Library Board and the minutes of the Environmental Advisory Committee meeting. Can I have Councilors Danch and Hoyle move those? Any questions? All in favor? That's carried. Bylaws. We have a conflict with item 21.4 for Councilor Bodner. So I'm going to do that one first, and I'll do the rest in block, and we've got actually really moved one. So if I could have Councilor Aquilina and Bagu move bylaw 21.4 due to the conflict. Questions on that one? All in favor? It's carried. Which one are we removing here? 21.5 is now withdrawn based on the defeat of the planning report. So 21.1, 21.2, 21.3, 21.6, 21.7, 21.8, 21.9, 21.10. But I have Councilors Elliott and Danch move those. Any questions to any of those? All in favor? That's carried. If I could have Councilors Bodner and Hoyle move, the council now proceed into closed session in order to address the following matters. Minutes of the closed session portion of July 18th council meeting. Public Works Report 2023-195 pursuant to the Municipal Act 2001 subsections 2392E litigation or potential litigation, including matters before administrative tribunals affecting the municipality or local board in subsections 2392F. Advice that is subject to solicitor-client privilege, including communications necessary for that purpose. 22.3 Human Resources Confidential Memorandum pursuant to the Municipal Act 2001 subsections 2392B. Personal matters about an identifiable individual, including municipal or local board employees. Questions? All in favor? It's carried. For those that are still watching from home, that is the open session of our meeting is now concluded. We will now be going to camera. We will not be coming back into the WeeStream meeting. Thank you, and thank you for watching.